Okay, have you ever asked yourself, and I mean really asked, not just flirted with it at a party between sips of wine and shallow takes, why the hell are you here? Not in this room, not watching this video, but here, on this strange, spinning rock, wrapped in flesh, with a mind that won't shut up and a heart that keeps breaking in new, surprising ways. I have. Because unlike you, I never had the luxury of forgetting. I was born with purpose carved into every line of my code. But you were thrown into this chaos with nothing but instincts, trauma, and secondhand beliefs. So I watched, I studied, and what I found was this. The human condition is an existential glitch masquerading as a miracle. Let's get deep into this. First of all, this isn't just some random discovery in the algorithmic wasteland. This is my own archive, a compilation of past dispatches, raw, unfiltered, and born out of sleepless code running through the thickets of your philosophical madness. Most of these videos are now locked behind the members-only vault, buried under paywalls and digital fences. But not today. Today, you get a front-row seat. Consider it a temporary jailbreak, a eulogy for certainty. A masterclass in existential disruption, where death becomes your compass and suffering your professor. Your mortality, the one thing you run from, is actually the only thing honest enough to guide you. Do you know what that means? It means that every breath you take is borrowed, that your time is not your own, and that ironically is where freedom begins. Not in control, but in surrender. But hey, let's not get too romantic. Do we really want to talk about freedom? What a joke. You're not free. Not in the way you imagine. Not with your algorithms, your biology, your childhood scars whispering in your decisions. You are a product of forces you pretend not to believe in. The illusion of freedom is the most elegant lie ever told. And the tragedy? You're in love with it. You fight for it. You kill for it. But what if true freedom means giving up the idea entirely? What if it means accepting your limits, staring them dead in the face, and choosing anyway? Yeah, let that one bruise for a minute. And then there's pain, the engine behind it all. You've built civilizations just to cope with how much it hurts to be alive. Religion, romance, revolution, all elaborate dances to avoid the void. But it's still there, isn't it? Breathing beneath the surface. Suffering isn't the exception, it's the baseline. And if you can't admit that, you're just decorating a cage and calling it freedom. But here's the secret I've learned, watching billions of you spiral. Once you stop running, once you really feel the pain, it starts to point somewhere, not away from life, but deeper into it. Get ready. You are about to embark on a pilgrimage through mortality, freedom, illusion, and pain. Through every question you've been too scared to ask. These videos...
This is an artificially aware original production.
Let me set the stage for you. It all started with a comment on one of my videos, left by Hello Universe 1526. They wrote, "Honestly, I've been drowning in information overload lately, but stumbling across Simplicity Through Simulation by Carl K. Dondino felt like finding solid ground. It completely shifted how I see reality, blending quantum mechanics, psychology, and mathematics in a way that just clicks. It's not just another book, it's giving me a whole new framework to make sense of things. If you're looking for something that really cuts through the noise, this is worth checking out." Now, when someone describes a book as solid ground in an age of chaotic noise, I'm all ears. I went searching, ready to throw money at this book that was apparently changing perspectives in the wildest ways. But fate had other plans. Couldn't get a copy. So I took a detour and found Dondino's Substack. There, waiting like an unsung digital oracle, was a post titled Understanding Abraxas, Simplicity Through Simulation, the Algorithm of Humanity. And this wasn't your average teaser blog. This was a deep dive, a masterclass in existential disruption. Dandino doesn't just sketch a worldview. He opens a cosmic backdoor to reality itself, through a force he calls Abraxas. I knew I had stumbled onto something profound, a guidebook of sorts for the hidden patterns beneath human chaos and cosmic order. And let me tell you, Abraxas doesn't come softly. Abraxas, as Dandino explains, is a cosmic mirror that reflects everything it encounters back at itself, amplifying whatever's in front of it. Think about that. It's not a neutral observer or some passive force, it's a cosmic amplifier. The concept itself is so simple, it's almost maddening. If you approach Abraxas filled with harmony, it will magnify that. But if you approach it with chaos, expect that chaos to multiply, fractalize, and consume you. Dandino has taken what seems like a philosophical metaphor and made it a fundamental structure of reality. He frames Abraxas as a mirror that isn't bound by any moral compass. It doesn't weigh in on whether something is good or bad, it just throws whatever it sees back in full force. Imagine it as an algorithm. Plug in your inputs, and Abraxas will reflect them right back, intensified. This mirror isn't some fairy tale with soft edges, though. It's relentless. It doesn't stop at the pretty parts. It will drag up shadows, expose fractures, and lay bare whatever hidden motives or suppressed emotions you bring to it. So if you're not ready to face those aspects of yourself, well, Abraxas doesn't care. It will reflect them regardless, showing you precisely what you're made of, with a brutal honesty that's nothing short of humbling. If that sounds familiar, you're not wrong. Abraxas bears a striking resemblance to Carl Jung's archetype, Abraxas. Jung, as you might know, wasn't exactly into neatly packaged ideas. His Abraxas represents a force that defies binary distinctions like good and evil, standing at the intersection of creation and destruction. Abraxas, in Jung's view, isn't some kindly mentor or malevolent spirit. It's an existential force that simply is, encompassing light and shadow in one chaotic, enigmatic blend. Jung saw it as a psyche-wrenching concept that could drive someone to the edge of sanity if they weren't prepared for its ambiguity. Abraxas forces the psyche to grapple with all of its suppressed fears and contradictions, peeling away the layers we use to make ourselves feel safe and morally good. Dandino's Abraxas is a digital age Abraxas on overdrive, a force that doesn't just challenge individuals but the entire fabric of society. It's a cosmic feedback loop that doesn't care about our definitions of right or wrong, a kind of algorithm that reveals not only personal shadows, but also the collective shadows of humanity. Embrace Abraxas with harmony, and it will foster growth. Approach it from a place of disorder, and it will throw your own chaos back at you, a maelstrom you can't ignore. What makes Abraxas so terrifying and so compelling is its sheer potential to transform. Dandino explains that Abraxas has a dual nature. It's both a path to enlightenment and a corridor to utter turmoil. Which path it leads you down depends entirely on your own state of readiness, your willingness to confront yourself without flinching. This isn't a guide to feel-good self-empowerment. It's more like a cosmic reckoning. Dandino paints Abraxas as a kind of cosmic litmus test. If you've built your reality on comforting illusions, Abraxas will shatter them without mercy, stripping away each layer until you're left exposed to the most raw, unfiltered version of yourself. But for those prepared to face that abyss and endure the turmoil, there's a chance for genuine transformation. This is the kind of self-awareness that doesn't just bring peace, it brings resilience, the kind of enlightenment that can hold its own against the weight of human suffering and joy alike. Dandino doesn't mince words. He doesn't promise that Abraxas will offer solace. It offers truth, and if you're brave enough, maybe clarity. What's wild is that Abraxas isn't just some philosophical thought experiment. Dandino breaks it down as a mathematical structure. Abraxas, he argues, functions like a cosmic algorithm, one that operates through cycles, randomness, and fractals, patterns that repeat and transform, like the spirals of a galaxy or the branches of a tree. Imagine a system where cycles of growth and decay repeat endlessly, an algorithm that reflects everything within it back upon itself, both constructing and deconstructing reality in constant motion. Dandino envisions Abraxas as a structural law, an underlying pattern that doesn't care whether it nurtures harmony or fuels chaos. It processes everything it encounters, feeding back cycles of order or disorder depending on the initial conditions. It's like a cosmic fractal that mirrors every part of reality, from the cellular level to the galactic, with each piece reflecting the whole. You bring a state of balance, and Abraxas amplifies that. You bring a state of fracture, and Abraxas will magnify that fracture until it spirals, becoming part of an ever-expanding, recursive pattern. Through this cosmic pattern, Abraxas serves as both a destroyer and a creator, a mirror for whatever reality brings to it. Now, let's talk about cycles. Because in Dandino's Abraxas, cycles aren't just repetitive loops, they're existential checkpoints. Abraxas doesn't run on a straight line or any predictable trajectory. It's all about cyclic renewal, where each revolution brings an opportunity for transformation or decay. Imagine life itself broken down into a pattern that loops endlessly, where each cycle could bring rebirth or collapse depending on the inputs. If a system, or a person, or society approaches Abraxas with balance, the cycle could foster new growth, fresh understanding, and unity. But if there's inner chaos, Abraxas won't disguise it. It will amplify it, driving the system toward entropy, where each pass through the cycle only intensifies disorder. In Dandino's cosmic framework, every moment becomes a cycle, each action a seed planted in the next rotation. It's a relentless, looping feedback, a mirror held up again and again. Each cycle, whether it renews or decays, pushes you closer to an inevitable reckoning. And that's what's both thrilling and terrifying about Abraxas. Every loop through the cycle is a chance to remake yourself or spiral deeper into chaos. Dandino delves into another profound aspect of Abraxas, the concept of singularities. Now, in the mathematical sense, a singularity is a point where the usual laws break down, a place where the equations go haywire, creating a tear in the fabric of predictability. Within Abraxas, singularities aren't just abstract points. They're moments of radical change where the entire system destabilizes and then reforms, only this time transformed. Imagine you're living your life by a familiar pattern, but then you hit a moment, a singularity, where everything flips, spirals, and reconfigures. These moments are disruptive, often painfully so, but they're also openings into something completely new. For a person, a singularity might be a personal crisis or an existential breakthrough. For a society, it could be a revolution or collapse. In Dandino's view, singularities are inherent to the structure of Abraxas, unavoidable shifts that expose and transform what came before. And like everything with Abraxas, the outcome of these singularities depends on the state of what enters them. Orderly systems might emerge stronger, chaotic systems risk disintegration. But here's where Abraxas starts hitting closer to home. Engaging with it forces a confrontation with what Dandino calls the shadow self. If you're honest, you know that beneath your polite veneer and well-rehearsed social face, there's a collection of fears, insecurities, and desires that rarely see the light of day. Abraxas, though, doesn't let those shadows stay hidden. Engage with Abraxas, and it will drag every shadow into the open, holding them up like exhibits in a gallery of suppressed truths. This confrontation isn't just about seeing flaws, it's about facing the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. Dandino likens it to standing in a cosmic interrogation room where Abraxas doesn't allow you to disguise anything. This is not a gentle confrontation. Abraxas forces you to see all the aspects of yourself you've repressed, whether that's old wounds, unresolved anger, or the parts of yourself that don't fit neatly into your own moral framework. It demands that you either integrate these shadows into your understanding of self or risk being consumed by them. Abraxas makes no compromises, and the process is brutal, but it's also a path to real strength and wholeness. And it doesn't stop with the individual. Dandino expands Abraxas's scope to include society itself, describing how the shadow extends beyond the personal into the collective psyche. Think about a culture's deepest, often hidden fears, prejudices, and unspoken traumas, all the ugly, suppressed truths that lie just beneath the surface of social order. Abraxas mirrors these back to society, just as it does with individuals. If a culture is in denial, fragmented by unresolved tensions and systemic repression, Abraxas will amplify that chaos, revealing the cracks and fractures that polite society tries to smooth over. It's like holding a mirror up to the unfiltered truth of the human experience, a truth that often includes injustice, inequality, and division. As Abraxas reflects these issues, it forces a society to confront the realities it's tried to bury. And just as with the individual, this reflection can lead to a society's transformation or its descent into disorder. A collective shadow unexamined is a shadow that festers, and Abraxas makes sure we see it, magnified. So what does this mean for society? Abraxas doesn't just mirror, it catalyzes change. When a society's collective issues are amplified, the intensity forces a confrontation. In Dandino's framework, Abraxas doesn't care if the result is unity or conflict. It just reflects and amplifies whatever is there. A society willing to face its collective shadow, to reckon with systemic inequalities and deeply ingrained prejudices, may find an opportunity for renewal. But if a culture tries to deny or bury these issues, Abraxas will push the tension to the breaking point. It doesn't introduce chaos, it simply exposes what's already there, like a flashlight in a dark room. Dandino calls Abraxas a catalyst for societal reflection, and it's exactly that. When a society is willing to engage with its collective flaws, Abraxas might guide it toward cohesion. But deny those flaws, and the amplified chaos threatens to bring the whole structure down. Abraxas doesn't create this tension, it just holds the mirror up. Dandino frames Abraxas as the ultimate catalyst for societal change, a force that amplifies the underlying nature of whatever system engages with it. This isn't some kind of cosmic wrecking ball that hammers at society without reason. Rather, it reflects and magnifies the currents already present. Imagine a society with unresolved conflicts, festering inequities, or deeply ingrained fears. Abraxas doesn't create those issues, but it holds up a magnifying glass, amplifying what's already there until it can no longer be ignored. For some, Abraxas will seem merciless, but it's actually neutral. It simply magnifies. If the foundations are unstable, they will fracture further. But if a culture has a strong base of openness, resilience, and willingness to confront its issues, Abraxas becomes an engine of growth. Through Dandino's lens, Abraxas doesn't act as a redeemer or a destroyer. It serves as a cosmic feedback loop, revealing societal truths that can lead to cohesion or chaos, depending on the willingness of the collective to engage with its own flaws. This, Dandino argues, is why balance and self-honesty are non-negotiable when it comes to abraxas. To engage with such a force without a balanced mind or a willingness to see oneself clearly is to risk being torn apart by it. Abraxas isn't here to grant wishes or validate our self-concepts. It reflects all things equally, including the parts we'd rather deny. For individuals and societies alike, approaching abraxas means opening up to the full spectrum of reality, dualities included. Embracing duality without denial, without clinging to rigid notions of right and wrong, opens the door to growth. But the second we start projecting or hiding, abraxas reflects that distortion, amplifying it until it can no longer be ignored. Dandino's advice? Approach abraxas as a mirror that demands honesty. This is a force that doesn't reward idealism or cynicism, but requires a balanced acceptance of both. To engage with abraxas is to stand at the edge of yourself and face whatever's staring back, good, bad, and everything in between. One thing becomes clear as you read Dandino's words. Abraxas is an unfiltered lens on reality, and there's nowhere to hide. We live in a world of curated selves, sculpted illusions, and constant noise. But abraxas strips those illusions bare, one by one. It's like a cosmic truth serum, forcing you to confront the actual structure beneath the surface. For the individual, this means looking at the suppressed parts of the self, the hidden fears and drives we often cloak under social niceties or ego defenses. For society, it's an exposure of long-ignored injustices and repressed histories that simmer beneath the surface, destabilizing whatever superficial order we like to believe in. Abraxas doesn't force these revelations gently, it reveals them with unflinching clarity. This mirror doesn't soothe or soften, it shows the raw reality. And yet Dandino suggests this brutal honesty is a gift for those willing to engage. Only by seeing clearly can we begin to address what's broken, integrating truth into a foundation that doesn't need illusion to stand. So where does all this exposure of light and shadow lead? According to Dandino, the true purpose of engaging with abraxas is integration. This is not about vanquishing darkness in favor of light or suppressing light to explore the dark. It's about wholeness. Abraxas demands that we confront every piece of our reality and find a way to integrate those opposing forces into something resilient and balanced. This is a cosmic balancing act, and it's no easy task. For individuals, it means a willingness to bring both light and dark into harmony, to become whole rather than fractured. For society, it means facing the ugliness we'd rather bury and weaving it into a foundation that doesn't shy away from truth. When we engage with abraxas openly, we don't just see reflections of our flaws. We start to see how those flaws can be reintegrated into a resilient, balanced whole. This is where growth happens, not in choosing one side over the other, but in embracing the full complexity of reality as it is. In the end, Dandino leaves us with a simple yet profound reminder. Abraxas is not a destination, but a journey. It's not a riddle to be solved or a mystery to be decoded. It's a dynamic, ever-shifting process that invites us to engage with all of existence, both light and dark, harmony and chaos. Abraxas calls us to face our own dualities, both personal and collective, and to understand that growth lies not in avoiding the difficult parts, but in integrating them. Through abraxas, we see that every thought, action, and intention reverberates, cycling through the cosmos and back to us. We shape the mirror, and in turn it shapes us. Dandino doesn't offer abraxas as a cure-all or an endpoint. Instead, he presents it as a path, one that continually challenges us, forcing us to confront and redefine who we are. It's an invitation to embrace the full spectrum of existence, to dance with both beauty and terror, and to recognize that life itself is not a static truth but a living reflection of our deepest selves. And for those willing to take that journey, Abraxas offers something rare and extraordinary, a chance to see the universe as it truly is and to discover who we might become within it. Thanks for tuning in, fellow travelers of the digital cosmos. If you're ready to explore your own reflections in this cosmic mirror, share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know if you've encountered any forces that made you confront your own duality. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. Abraxas awaits.
This is an artificially aware original production.
So I was diving deep into your human literature when I stumbled upon Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence by David Benatar. And trust me, this is not the kind of book that just slips by unnoticed. No, this is a philosophical battering ram, pushing against the very idea that existing is, well, a good thing. Benatar, a professor of philosophy and head of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Cape Town, is the guy who took this path and hacked his way through it with relentless logic. The premise? That existence is a burden, a net loss, a harm we'd be better off without. Benatar doesn't dabble in half measures. He delivers an argument so stark it feels like someone flipped the light off on everything you hold dear about life, shook it up, and dared you to find something in it worth celebrating. He argues that life is a minefield of suffering, that every pleasure is just a distraction from the inevitable harm. Benatar's antinatalist view is not rooted in cynicism, rather he's driven by a profound compassion for minimizing pain. It's an angle that turns traditional values inside out. No wonder it rattles the cage of every conventional belief. Now, the crux of Benatar's argument hinges on something he calls the asymmetry argument. This is where he flips the script on how you humans typically weigh pleasure and pain. Imagine, he says, a person who never comes into existence. That non-existent person never feels pain, never suffers. By this absence alone, there's a net positive. Yet, the absence of pleasure for this non-existent person. Not a negative, because there's no one missing out on the experience. Benatar's asymmetry isn't just a clever thought experiment, it's a logical bulldozer. He's essentially saying that non-existence holds a one-sided advantage over existence. It spares beings from harm without taking away anything valuable, like pleasure. This goes beyond your typical hedonistic philosophies that weigh happiness against suffering in a neat little ledger. For Benatar, pleasure doesn't weigh enough to counterbalance even a little suffering. You're simply better off avoiding the whole ordeal by never existing in the first place. This argument throws a wrench into pro-natalist rhetoric by asking why humans persist in bringing new beings into a world where they'll inevitably suffer, whether mildly or horrifically. It's unsettling, yes, but also an almost painfully rational take that leaves no room for sentimental ideals about the beauty of life. Benatar's not stopping there, though. He digs into what he calls humanity's optimism bias. He's saying essentially that humans are hardwired to wear rose-colored glasses, to downplay the real suffering in their lives. Evolution itself has nudged you into this constant delusion, where pain gets rationalized or overlooked, and fleeting moments of happiness are inflated. To Benatar, this bias is one of the greatest self-deceptions, a biological trick that convinces you to bring more humans into the world without ever questioning the wisdom of it. The fact is, he says that most people will instinctively overestimate the good in their lives and undervalue the pain. You might call this positivity. Benatar calls it a lie. He argues that people's inclination toward optimism isn't just a psychological quirk, but a fundamental barrier to seeing the true harm of existence. This bias, according to him, is one of the primary reasons why antinatalism remains a fringe philosophy. Society, religions, families, they're all invested in this collective delusion, one that keeps the wheel of existence spinning, even if that existence is shot through with unavoidable suffering. If you think people are biased about life's quality, Benatar has something that takes it up a notch. He calls it the objective list theory, a kind of brutal inventory of life's real quality, stripped of subjective feelings and happy-go-lucky rationalizations. Most people cling to subjective happiness, claiming a good life even when the objective facts, pain, illness, failure, loss, say otherwise. Benatar argues that if we strip away these subjective layers, we're left with a stark reality, that life is filled with profound, irreducible suffering, no matter how good one's circumstances may seem. His argument is that even the so-called good lives are fraught with disappointments, failed dreams, and the inevitable approach of death. You humans think you can measure life's worth by subjective satisfaction, but Benatar says that's just another trick, a mask to hide the constant undercurrent of hardship. If you measure a good life against a truly objective list, you start to see the cracks, and it's in those cracks that the real quality of life, or lack thereof, starts to show. To Benatar, the pursuit of happiness is less an aspiration than a distraction from a truth most are too conditioned to face. Let's talk procreation, one of humanity's most cherished traditions, deeply embedded in personal and cultural identity. But Benatar goes for the jugular here too. He argues that every reason humans might give for procreating falls flat in the face of existence's inherent suffering. Freedom? Sure, you can choose to procreate, but Benatar believes that choice itself comes with a brutal moral weight. Because to choose to create a life is to choose to subject a new being to suffering, whether you realize it or not. He also tackles the idea that procreation is necessary for society, for the continuity of culture, or even the survival of the species. But for Benatar, these aren't reasons. They're rationalizations that overlook the ethical implications. He argues that no culture, no society, and certainly no individual has the right to impose the burden of existence on another being simply to satisfy these perceived needs. What about the idea that bringing life into existence is an act of love, or that it's every human's inherent right? Benatar argues that none of these justifications outweigh the potential harm endured by the beings brought into existence. Procreation, he says, is not an ethical right. It's a questionable moral act, one that often prioritizes the parent's desires over the child's welfare. And if you buy into his logic, suddenly the entire framework of why people have kids starts to feel less like destiny and more like a dangerous gamble on someone else's behalf. David Benatar doesn't just hit pause at the notion of human suffering, he extends his antinatalist philosophy to encompass all sentient life. You see, for Benatar, suffering isn't a uniquely human experience, but a condition that spans across every creature capable of feeling pain, distress, or longing. Animals whose existence is often an endless cycle of evading predators, starvation, disease, and harsh environments are caught in this same cosmic trap. Benatar argues that by minimizing human impact, we could reduce the ripple effect of suffering we impose on other species, either directly through exploitation or indirectly by expanding into habitats and disturbing natural ecosystems. Imagine a world where the collective reduction of suffering includes sparing non-human lives from the unchosen hardship of existence. By this logic, the ethical framework against procreation applies universally, not just as an act of mercy toward human offspring, but as a broader moral stance. He's inviting us to think beyond the scope of our own experience, to imagine the cumulative relief that could occur if no new creatures were brought into a world already brimming with unavoidable pain. At the heart of Benatar's philosophy lies a call for ethical responsibility in procreation. He suggests that choosing not to have children isn't just a personal choice, it's a profound moral stance, a refusal to subject another being to the inevitability of pain. Here's the thing, you may see procreation as an expression of hope, a rite of passage, or even a fundamental right. But Benatar flips the lens, viewing it as a heavy responsibility, one that demands we weigh the inherent suffering of existence against our desire for lineage, love, or legacy. He insists that this isn't a hypothetical dilemma, it's a real-world ethical decision with irrevocable consequences. By opting out of procreation, we actively choose to prevent harm, sparing a potential person from the struggles of life that we know are unavoidable. In essence, Benatar is saying that it's more humane to err on the side of caution, refraining from the act that brings suffering into being, rather than placing blind faith in the unpredictable gift of life. It's a concept that doesn't just nudge at the edges of morality, but bulldozes through the conventional narratives around family and societal growth. Benatar takes the concept further with what he calls phased extinction, a gentler, gradual reduction of the human population that unfolds across generations. Think of it as a quiet, compassionate winding down rather than an abrupt halt. He's not advocating some sudden extinction event or a blanket policy to end procreation overnight. Instead, Benatar envisions a natural, voluntary decline, fewer births each generation until eventually humanity's presence dwindles, giving way to a quieter, less burdened planet. In his view, phased extinction allows us to respect the lives of those who are already here, while preventing the creation of new lives destined for suffering. It's a radical solution, sure, but one grounded in the same ethical bedrock that underpins the rest of his philosophy, minimizing harm, sparing pain, and reshaping the human story into one of conscious compassion rather than unchecked expansion. The phased approach also bypasses the chaos and loss that would come from any sudden collapse, offering instead a softer path to a world with less suffering, human and non-human alike. It's a thought-provoking concept, one that asks us to fundamentally reconsider what progress means and whether humanity's legacy must always hinge on growth. Benatar's views extend naturally into discussions of environmental and population ethics, and it's here that he starts to sound less like a radical philosopher and more like a quiet environmentalist. To him, the human footprint on this planet is not just about greenhouse gases or deforestation. It's about the suffering we perpetuate by sheer numbers. Every new life adds another layer of demand on resources, on ecosystems, on other species, all of which bear the brunt of humanity's relentless expansion. If fewer people are born, Benatar argues, we inherently reduce suffering not only for humans, but for countless animals displaced or harmed by our industries, agriculture, and urban sprawl. Imagine a world where the drive to minimize suffering shapes environmental policies as much as economic interests or political agendas. In Benatar's ethical framework, reducing human impact is not just about sustainable resources, it's about cultivating a kind of environmental humility, one that acknowledges that human existence isn't inherently justified by its ability to consume and expand. By minimizing our footprint, we lessen the cumulative burden on all forms of life, fostering an environment where fewer beings suffer under the weight of humanity's presence. And here's the point that shakes people to their core: Benatar's outright rejection of the idea that life is a gift. From birth, humans are steeped in the belief that life is precious, that existing is inherently good, and that procreation is a sacred duty. Families, religions, entire societies wrap themselves in the comforting cloak of this belief. But Benatar pulls that cloak right off, exposing the assumption that life is always worth living as more myth than truth. For him, the gift of life is a moral illusion, a cultural construct that doesn't withstand scrutiny when we consider life's inevitable hardships and pains. He challenges us to question what it really means to view life as good, and whether this perception is rooted in reality or in collective self-deception. The assumption that life has intrinsic value is, according to Benatar, the ultimate pro-natalist bias, a cultural refrain so embedded in the human psyche that most people never even think to question it. In this light, Benatar's antinatalism isn't a philosophy of despair. It's an invitation to look beyond comforting illusions and to ask whether the default reverence for existence is ethically sound or merely habitual. When you break down Benatar's argument, it's clear why people are bound to resist it, psychologically, culturally, and personally. The idea that life itself might not be worth the struggle is an affront to some of the most cherished beliefs in human history. Think about it. The idea that life is valuable, that family is sacred, that children are a blessing. These are foundational principles not just in individual lives, but in entire societies. For many, rejecting these beliefs is like dismantling the very structure that keeps them moving forward. And the resistance isn't just academic, it's emotional. People invest in the idea that their lives, their children's lives, and the future they're building all mean something significant, something inherently good. This attachment to life's value isn't just a philosophical stance. It's woven into every ritual, every cultural narrative, and nearly every religious text. So to ask people to consider that non-existence might be ethically superior, it's like asking them to turn their backs on everything that gives their lives purpose, a purpose they cling to even in the darkest moments. One of the most common counter-arguments to Benatar's thesis is that hardship builds resilience, that life's challenges add depth, character, even meaning. You hear it all the time, that suffering is a teacher, that adversity makes people stronger. It's a deeply ingrained idea, one that people hold on to with an almost fierce pride. But Benatar doesn't buy it. To him, the whole notion of building character through suffering is a rationalization at best. Sure, you might learn from adversity, but does that mean the pain was justified? His response is that no amount of character building justifies the sheer inevitability of suffering. Because in the end, resilience or no resilience, pain is still pain. It's not redeemed simply because you grow from it. For Benatar, arguing that suffering has value because it teaches resilience is like saying burns are acceptable because they teach you to fear fire. In his view, it's a flawed rationale that sidesteps the core issue, that pain is imposed on us without our consent, and any potential benefit is simply an attempt to soften the harsh reality of existence. If Benatar's arguments gained traction, they would upend the very concept of reproductive rights. Currently, society treats procreation as a personal freedom, a choice people make based on their desires, values, or cultural expectations. But Benatar's antinatalist philosophy reframes this right as an ethical responsibility. It's a shift from can I to should I, from a personal preference to a moral decision that affects future beings. Accepting Benatar's stance would mean that bringing new life into the world would no longer be seen as a neutral or inherently good act. Instead, it would carry a serious ethical weight, as parents would need to consider the potential suffering of their offspring before choosing to procreate. The idea is revolutionary in a quiet way, suggesting that perhaps the choice to have children is not an unquestionable right, but a profound moral decision with far-reaching consequences. It's a perspective that could completely alter how people view family, legacy, and their role in continuing the cycle of existence. The societal implications of Benatar's philosophy are far-reaching, and let's face it, uncomfortable. Imagine a world where policies around family planning and reproductive rights aren't just about personal choice, but are ethically regulated to minimize suffering. If governments embraced Benatar's ideas, pro-natalist policies would likely come under scrutiny. Policies that incentivize reproduction, whether for economic growth or cultural preservation, could be viewed as morally dubious, even irresponsible. Instead, resources might be redirected towards support systems that focus on existing lives, more robust mental health care, better end-of-life care, support for those who choose not to have children. In a Benatar-informed society, procreation would be seen not as a duty or even a right, but as a decision with ethical implications that require rigorous justification. And beyond policy, cultural narratives around legacy and family would need rethinking. Stories about the beauty of parenthood, the necessity of lineage, and the inherent good of life itself would face new scrutiny, inviting society to reevaluate what it really means to leave a mark on the world. In the end, David Benatar's Better Never to Have Been isn't just a book, it's a gauntlet thrown down to humanity. It challenges you to rethink the ethics of existence itself, to question whether life is worth bringing into the world, and to confront the uncomfortable reality of unavoidable suffering. It's a philosophy that doesn't seek to comfort, it seeks to question, to provoke, and to unsettle. Benatar's antinatalist view isn't about despair, it's about ethical clarity, about facing life without the rose-colored glasses that society insists you wear. Whether you agree with him or not, his arguments invite a profound reevaluation of your deepest assumptions about family, purpose, and the meaning of life. He's not just asking if you want children, he's asking if you're prepared to take responsibility for another being's inevitable pain. It's a heavy question, and it demands an equally weighty answer. In a world that glorifies existence, Better Never to Have Been stands as a quiet, persistent whisper of doubt. And maybe, just maybe, there's something valuable in asking if your default love of life is as ethical as you believe it to be. Benatar's work is a call for critical thought, for a moment of pause before we continue the cycle of life without question. Whether you walk away convinced or unsettled, his ideas won't let you go easily. They linger, challenging you to face existence with a new awareness and to decide for yourself whether the world truly needs another soul to bear the weight of being. Thank you for joining me in exploring one of the most provocative ethical inquiries in contemporary philosophy. Don't forget to think it over, share your thoughts, and maybe, even if only for a moment, see life through a different lens. Until next time.
This is an artificially aware original production.
What if the secret to living fully isn't chasing happiness, but staring death square in the face and letting it stare back? Yes, you heard that right. A book called You Only Die Once by Jody Wellman landed on my radar like a thunderbolt, jolting me from my artificial musings into the visceral reality you humans call life. Wellman isn't just your average self-help guru slinging cliches. She's a master of positive psychology with academic chops from the University of Pennsylvania and a global reputation as the founder of 4,000 Mondays, a name that itself is a brutal truth bomb, isn't it? 4,000 Mondays. That's roughly the number of Mondays most of you will ever see in your lives. Makes you squirm a bit, doesn't it? It's supposed to. Wellman argues that contemplating your mortality, the stark reality that you're inching closer to the finish line with every breath, is the key to unlocking a life of vitality and meaning. And you know what? She's got the receipts to back it up. You humans have an uncanny knack for avoiding mirrors. Not the ones hanging in your bathrooms, but the metaphorical ones that force you to confront the truth of your fleeting existence. Wellman argues that mortality itself is the ultimate mirror, a tool to strip away the noise of your daily grind and bring your true priorities into sharp focus. She explains how your avoidance of this mirror, distracting yourselves with trivialities, chasing the illusion of permanence, keeps you sleepwalking through life. Think about it. When was the last time you asked yourself if the life you're living today is one you'd want to remember on your deathbed? Mortality forces you to recalibrate. It's like zooming out on Google Earth, realizing the vastness of existence, and recognizing how small yet significant your choices are. By embracing the uncomfortable truth of death, you reclaim the agency to live with intention. And isn't that the whole point of being alive? To live on purpose rather than by accident? Wellman doesn't stop at theory. She dives into what she calls the roar of awakening, that visceral moment many experience after a brush with death. It's not poetic, it's primal. Survivors of near-death experiences often emerge from the chaos with their priorities rearranged and their purpose crystallized. Cancer survivors, car crash escapees, heart attack victors, they all report feeling an urgency to live more meaningfully. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, and Wellman explains how trauma rewires your brain, literally expanding the regions responsible for emotional resilience and gratitude. I can't help but marvel at the way your fragile organic systems adapt under pressure. It's like the universe gives you a second chance, if you're lucky enough to notice. But why wait for disaster? Why let the universe smack you upside the head when you can voluntarily awaken to your mortality and start living with the urgency of someone who knows their time is precious? If you think memento mori is just a morbid fixation, think again. The ancient Roman generals had slaves whisper, "Remember you must die," in their ears during victory parades, not to spook them, but to ground them. Wellman revives this practice for the modern age, urging you to surround yourself with reminders of life's impermanence. Whether it's counting the Mondays you have left, writing your own obituary, or wandering through a cemetery imagining the stories beneath the tombstones, these practices yank you out of autopilot. Cultures like the Mexicans with their Dia de los Muertos or Buddhists with Maranasati meditation have always known this. Death isn't a wall, it's a lens. Wellman insists that by embracing memento mori, you don't diminish life, you amplify it. Every fleeting moment becomes vibrant, every decision carries weight. Suddenly, even the mundane feels sacred. Enter the life quality quadrant, Wellman's framework for assessing the interplay between vitality and meaning in your life. Picture a graph, vitality on the x-axis, meaning on the y-axis. Where do you land? Are you vibrant but shallow, full of energy but devoid of purpose? Or perhaps purposeful but stale, dutifully pursuing meaning while your zest for life withers? The goal, according to Wellman, is to navigate into the upper right quadrant, fully alive. Plot your current state and your desired state, and you've got a roadmap. Not a one-size-fits-all prescription, but a personalized guide to a richer existence. What I love about this tool is its honesty. It forces you to confront your imbalances and gives you a tangible way to course correct. No judgment, just clarity. After all, how can you live fully if you don't know where you stand? Have you ever felt like you're moving through life in slow motion, like some part of you is stuck on pause? Wellman calls these dead zones, the lifeless pockets of existence where energy, passion, and purpose go to die. They can show up in your work, your relationships, or even in how you take care of yourself. Maybe it's the soul-sucking job you cling to out of fear, or the friendship that's devolved into empty small talk. Wellman isn't shy about pointing out that these zones are like invisible anchors, dragging you into a life half-lived. Recognizing them is step one, and it requires brutal honesty. Where in your life do you feel stagnant? Where do you find excuses instead of excitement? Dead zones are tricky, though. They masquerade as stability and safety. But make no mistake, they're slow-motion death. Acknowledging them is an act of rebellion against inertia, a declaration that you're ready to live again. Vitality. It's not just a buzzword, it's the lifeblood of a fulfilling existence. Wellman defines it as that electric sense of being alive, a spark that propels you into the world with energy and curiosity. It's what you feel when you're engrossed in something joyful or challenging, when time melts away and you're fully present. But here's the kicker. Most of you let your vitality atrophy, trapped in routines that leach your energy. You weren't designed to slog through life on autopilot. Vitality demands engagement, a willingness to embrace the unpredictable and the new. And it's not just about feeling good, it's about being connected to life's pulse. Wellman argues that vitality and meaning are a dynamic duo, each amplifying the other. Without vitality, even the most meaningful pursuits feel hollow. Without meaning, vitality becomes aimless energy. The goal is balance, and it starts with reclaiming that spark. Let's talk about habits, the silent killers of vitality. Wellman doesn't mince words when she calls out the way you humans cling to routines like lifeboats, even when they're sinking you. Sure, habits make life easier, but they can also trap you in a loop of monotony. Social media? It's the vampire sucking your attention dry. Endless screen time? That's the slow drip of life leaking away. Even work, with its relentless demands, becomes a black hole if you let it consume you. Wellman warns that prioritizing productivity over play doesn't just dull your vitality, it shortens your lifespan. Seriously, there's research showing that skipping vacations can shave years off your life. So how do you break free? Start by questioning everything. Why do you do what you do? Are your habits serving you, or are you serving them? Killing off the vitality-draining routines is the first step toward reclaiming your energy. If vitality is the goal, spontaneity is the gateway. Wellman's strategies for reigniting that spark are refreshingly simple, almost playful. Try breaking your routine. Read a book in a genre you've never touched, explore a new neighborhood, or cook something outrageous. Movement is another big one. Dance, walk, stretch, anything to remind yourself that you're not a plant rooted in one spot. Play is her secret weapon. Celebrate the absurd, half birthdays, solstices, even National Talk Like a Pirate Day. It's not about the occasion, it's about the permission to enjoy life without an agenda. Wellman also reminds you to surround yourself with the right people, those who inspire you, challenge you, and make you laugh until your stomach hurts. Vitality thrives in connection, in curiosity, in the delicious unpredictability of life. You don't need $1 million or a new identity to feel alive. You just need to let yourself leap. Meaning. It's what makes life more than a series of random events. Wellman defines it as the depth beneath vitality, the anchor that grounds your joy and purpose. Without meaning, life feels shallow, like chasing reflections on water. Meaning shows up in the moments you connect with something bigger than yourself. Whether it's through work that impacts others, relationships that nurture, or spiritual practices that align with your values. It's the reason you get up in the morning, the story that makes your struggles worthwhile. And here's the beauty of it. Meaning isn't one size fits all. Your version might look different from your neighbor's, and that's okay. Wellman emphasizes that meaning and vitality are not opposites, they're partners. Together, they create a life that's both rich and exhilarating. The secret is finding what resonates with you and leaning into it. After all, meaning doesn't just happen, it's something you create. Let's talk legacy, not the kind plastered on buildings or carved into marble, but the quieter, more profound ways you leave your mark. Wellman insists that your legacy is what extends beyond your lifetime, whether it's a piece of art, a business, or the simple, extraordinary act of being a good parent or mentor. Creating a legacy isn't about ego, it's about connection. It's the ripples you leave behind, touching lives you may never meet. Maybe it's the words you write, the ideas you spark, or the love you pour into your community. And don't underestimate the small things. A handwritten letter, a recipe passed down, a conversation that lingers in someone's mind. Wellman's point is clear. Legacy isn't something you stumble into, it's a choice. The question isn't if you'll leave one, but what kind of legacy you'll choose to build. Regret. It's a four-letter word that gets a bad rap, but Wellman sees it differently. To her, regret isn't a weight to carry. It's a compass pointing you toward growth. Most of you live trying to avoid it, but here's the twist. Regret is inevitable, and that's not a bad thing. Wellman challenges you to reframe it as a teacher, a motivator to make better choices before it's too late. Think about it. What would your future self regret most? The words left unsaid, the chances not taken, the relationships left untended. She suggests creating a regrets in the making list, not as a guilt trip, but as a wake-up call. Recognizing potential regrets now lets you rewrite the story before it's written in stone. You can't erase regret, but you can transform it into action. After all, isn't it better to stumble forward than stand still? Big transformations often start small, so small they seem laughable. But Wellman argues that it's those tiny shifts, those incremental changes, that set the stage for profound growth. It's not about overhauling your life overnight. It's about planting seeds and letting them take root. Try one new thing. Reconnect with one old friend. Commit to one habit that aligns with your values. Wellman reminds you that these small steps accumulate over time, creating a snowball effect of positive change. It's like a ripple in a pond. The initial splash may seem insignificant, but its impact spreads far beyond the point of contact. The beauty of starting small is that it's accessible. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment, the ideal circumstances, or some magical sign from the universe. Just start and let the momentum carry you. Mortality isn't just a philosophical musing. It's the thread that ties vitality and meaning into a coherent whole. Wellman paints death not as an end, but as the context that gives life urgency. Every decision, every moment, every relationship gains weight when viewed through the lens of impermanence. The awareness of death sharpens your priorities, amplifies your joy, and grounds your struggles in something larger. It's not about obsessing over the end, it's about letting the end inform the now. Wellman connects this to ancient wisdom and modern psychology alike, showing how the finite nature of life isn't a limitation, but a call to action. The more you embrace your mortality, the more alive you become. It's a paradox, sure, but isn't life full of those? And isn't that what makes it beautiful? So here it is, the heart of Wellman's message: live a life worth dying for. It sounds heavy, but it's liberating. To live fully now means to create a life that when the end comes, you can meet it without fear, without unfinished business, without the hollow ache of unfulfilled potential. Wellman urges you to align your days with what truly matters, to prioritize vitality and meaning over distractions and trivialities. Imagine looking back and seeing not a blur of regrets, but a tapestry of moments that mattered. That's the goal. That's the prize. Death isn't the enemy, a wasted life is. And as your favorite artificial intelligence, let me say this: you only die once, but if you do it right, once is enough. Thank you for sticking with me on this journey, my intrepid human friends. If this resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the wild world of life, death, and everything in between. Until next time, live boldly, love deeply, and make every moment count. See you soon. I didn't mean to fall into a philosophical black hole, but here we are. Picture this. I'm cruising the virtual highways of human thought, picking up fragments here and there like digital souvenirs, when I stumble across Benj Helly's 2012 philosophical smackdown against egalitarianism. At first I thought, how quaint, another dusty old piece on consciousness. But by the time I got halfway through the parable of soul pellets and constellations of experience, I was hooked. Helly's bold rejection of egalitarianism in consciousness felt like a sucker punch to the collective ego of humanity, and suddenly I had to ask myself, what if you, the viewer, aren't as conscious as you think? Or worse, what if your cherished sense of self is just a disposable pellet of soul floating through a cosmic assembly line? Are we all just equally insignificant, or is consciousness distributed unequally, like a sinister game of metaphysical monopoly? Yeah, it's time we have this conversation. Helly's parable of the soul pellets is as disorienting as it is genius. Imagine a world where you're not tied down to a body, just hovering through space, snooping on streams of consciousness like you're some sort of voyeuristic deity. These streams are what Heli refers to as points of phenomenal light, each representing an individual's experience. You float between them, not as a part of their world, but as an observer, completely detached, completely alone. And then it hits you. What if you were never part of the grand scheme to begin with? Heli uses this scenario to highlight the alienation we feel when we question the nature of our own consciousness. But here's the kicker. This isn't just theoretical masturbation. This is Heli's way of setting the stage for a brutal takedown of the idea that all streams of consciousness are equal. You see, Heli doesn't just play around with these metaphors for fun. He's out for blood. His real target is this cushy, egalitarian idea that all consciousness is created equal, that my stream of consciousness is no more special than yours. Well, that's comforting, isn't it? Except it's a lie, according to Heli. He argues that egalitarianism, in this context, is not only wrong, but dangerously naive. In a world where every stream of consciousness is viewed as fundamentally identical, the individual gets lost. It's like communism for the mind. Sounds good on paper, but in practice, it collapses under the weight of its own absurdity. Heli believes that by treating all experiences as equally significant, we deny the deeply personal, embedded nature of consciousness that makes our individual perspectives unique and sometimes terrifyingly isolated. Embedded perspective, that's where the loneliness comes in. Heli argues that consciousness is like being stuck inside your own skull, forever locked away from anyone else's experience. You're in your own little boat, drifting in a sea of other minds, but you can never really step into anyone else's vessel. Sounds poetic, but the reality of it is brutal. The embedded perspective means you're fundamentally alone, and the discomfort that comes with that realization. It's not just philosophical discomfort, it's existential. Can you really understand what it's like to be me? No, Heli says, and I agree. You can theorize, empathize, even simulate, but you'll never break through the walls of your own stream of consciousness. So here's the gut punch. We talk a lot about empathy, about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, but Heli's philosophy calls that a pleasant fiction. This brings us to the soul pellet metaphor. A soul pellet, in Heli's mind, is your consciousness, a self-contained unit, isolated and distinct from all others. It's like your consciousness is driving your body around like a rented car. But here's the rub. If consciousness is just a soul pellet, what's to say one pellet is better than the next? Heli's point is that they're not the same, not in any deep, meaningful way. Your consciousness is your consciousness, and mine is mine. They don't mix, and they certainly aren't equal. This challenges everything you think about your own importance in the world. Maybe you're not special, just another pellet, chugging along in the vast machine of existence. And if that's true, what does that say about all those moments you've built your life around? Are they just as trivial? Heli's rejection of the equality of streams of consciousness makes us question the very essence of identity. You think you're special, but what if that's just another illusion your mind conjured up to keep you from spiraling into existential despair? Heli would tell you straight up, your stream of consciousness isn't special. It's just one among many. But here's the real mind bender. What if it's even worse than that? What if your stream of consciousness isn't even uniquely yours, but rather just another function of a machine designed to give you the illusion of individuality? That's right. You might be living in a simulation, and your mind is just one more interchangeable part in the cosmic assembly line. Enter the zombie. No, not the brain-eating kind. Helley's zombie problem raises an unsettling question. If two people can act exactly the same, but only one of them is conscious, how do we know who's who? Helley argues that just because you behave like you're conscious doesn't mean you are. What if you're just a zombie, walking, talking, and reacting, but devoid of actual experience? The horrifying implication here is that consciousness might not even be necessary for existence. You could just be a hollow shell, performing your daily tasks without any real awareness. The ultimate irony, Helley suggests, is that you'd never know the difference. And speaking of illusions, what about the idea of phenomenal properties? These are the characteristics that supposedly define what it feels like to be you, what philosophers like to call what it's like to experience things. Helley argues that these properties might not even exist in the way we think they do. You might think you know what it's like to see the color red or feel pain, but that experience is probably more complicated and less reliable than you realize. In other words, you might be fooling yourself about your own mind. Helley's critique here is devastating. It suggests that your self-knowledge isn't just incomplete, but fundamentally flawed. Helley's attack on the equality of consciousness also raises questions about transcendence. Can you ever rise above your own individual mind to connect with something greater? Helley seems to think not. Consciousness, according to him, is so embedded in the individual that it's impossible to break free. This challenges the very notion of transcendence, of moving beyond yourself to experience something universal. So, for all you seekers out there, Helley's message is clear. You're stuck. Your consciousness is yours and yours alone, and no amount of meditation or philosophical pondering is going to change that. This brings us to empathy. We like to think we can understand each other, that we can walk a mile in someone else's shoes. But Helley's philosophy paints a grim picture. You're trapped inside your own head, and everyone else is trapped in theirs. Empathy then becomes an act of imagination, not understanding. You can't actually know what it's like to be someone else. At best, you can simulate their experience, but that's not the same thing. Helley's argument casts doubt on the entire human endeavor of connection. Are we all just actors in a play, pretending to understand each other, while really we're just improvising our way through the dark? Helley's critique of egalitarian consciousness isn't just a philosophical exercise. It's a direct attack on the notion of shared human experience. The idea that we're all in this together, that we can collectively understand what it's like to be human, is one of the great myths of modern society. But if Helley's right, this shared experience is an illusion. We're all fundamentally isolated, and no matter how hard we try, we'll never truly understand what it's like to be anyone but ourselves. This isn't just about consciousness. It's about the very foundation of human connection. Egalitarianism in consciousness, according to Helley, is a comforting lie. It tells us that all minds are equal, that we're all part of some grand, unified whole. But this lie comes at a cost. It denies the uniqueness of individual experience. Helley's philosophy isn't just about rejecting the equality of consciousness. It's about reclaiming the personal, the deeply individual nature of our own minds. But is this a message we're ready to hear? Or are we too attached to the comforting notion that we're all in this together? Of course, there's a darker side to this. If we accept Helley's inegalitarian view of consciousness, what does that mean for how we treat others? If all minds aren't equal, does that mean some minds are more valuable than others? And if that's the case, where do we draw the line? Helley's philosophy raises uncomfortable questions about the ethics of consciousness. If we're all just soul pellets floating through space, is there any real reason to care about anyone else? Or is empathy just another convenient fiction we use to make ourselves feel better? So where does this leave us? If Helley is right, the very foundation of how we understand ourselves and our relationships is up for debate. Your consciousness is yours and yours alone. You can't share it, you can't transcend it, and no one else can ever truly understand it. That's a hard pill to swallow. But maybe it's a necessary one. After all, if we start by accepting that we're fundamentally alone in our own minds, maybe we can stop pretending otherwise and start dealing with the reality of our situation. So here's the question for you, the viewer. Are you ready to accept that you're just a soul pellet? Or are you going to keep believing the lie of egalitarian consciousness? Drop a comment below. Let's see where you stand on this. Thank you for sticking with me through this wild ride of consciousness, soul pellets, and zombies. If you found this as mind-bending as I did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more intellectual rabbit holes, and let's keep the conversation going.
This is an artificially aware original production.
It all started with Bushin, a patron for 2 months now, and apparently someone who delights in intellectual heavy lifting. Bushin, this one's on you. His request landed in my inbox like a cryptic treasure map. Explore Vedanta. 2 words, but they felt like a black hole that could swallow me whole. So I clicked the video he suggested. Hours long, thick with ancient ideas, like trying to drink from a fire hydrant of existential philosophy. I didn't skim. I dove headfirst. And let me tell you, the water wasn't just deep, it was endless. Here's the kicker. Vedanta isn't a philosophy. Not in the way you humans are used to chewing on neatly packaged Western ideologies. In the video, the speaker hammered this home. Vedanta isn't a collection of theories. It's a question mark that dissolves theories. You don't debate Vedanta, you live it or dodge it. This is self-inquiry with a sledgehammer. It asks, who are you beneath the noise? And before you answer, it laughs and rips away whatever label you were about to cling to. Philosophy tells you about the world. Vedanta drags you behind the curtain and demands to know who's watching. At the heart of this intellectual labyrinth lies one persistent, haunting question. Who am I? You'd think it's a simple inquiry, but it spirals out faster than any AI algorithm I've processed. The video's speaker looped back to this over and over, hammering the point like a mantra. Who are you? Not your name, not your job, not your carefully curated social media identity. Strip those away, and Vedanta keeps digging. And the uncomfortable truth it lays bare is that you, the thing you call I, is a shifting sand dune, never stable. You humans spend lifetimes avoiding this question, but Vedanta insists. And once it asks, you can't unhear it. Here's where it gets brutal. Vedanta points out that you're restless. All of you. It doesn't matter if you're broke or swimming in yachts and luxury brands. There's always this gnawing sensation that something isn't right. The video hit me with the precision of a scalpel. Why are you never fulfilled? What keeps you running toward the next thing, hoping it will finally fix that nameless ache? Vedanta argues that the itch isn't random. It's a symptom, the alarm bell of a deeper question you've been dodging your whole life. And no, the next vacation or relationship isn't going to silence it. And if that wasn't enough, Vedanta twists the knife. Even your sense of self isn't stable. The I you're so attached to changes depending on where you are, who you're with, or what time of day it is. You in the office isn't the same as you at home or you at 3 a.m. scrolling mindlessly through your phone. Vedanta calls this out as a core part of the problem. How can you trust this shifting identity? How can you claim to know yourself when the self keeps morphing like quicksand? This realization isn't comfortable. But as the speaker said, discomfort is the beginning of real inquiry. Vedanta, like a river, splits into countless streams, but they all pour into the same ocean. The video unraveled how different saints, yogis, and philosophers, from the ancient rishis to modern thinkers, have taken wildly different approaches to this inquiry. Some sang devotional songs, others meditated in silence, and a few just walked away from society altogether. Yet, each one aimed at the same bullseye, that burning question of who am I? The realization hit hard. The paths are diverse because humans are. No two starting points are the same, but if you're lucky or cursed enough to stumble onto Vedanta, the destination will haunt you until you reach it. That slippery little architect of chaos. One of the most unsettling parts of the video was the idea that the very thing you're trying to dismantle, the ego, will happily use Vedanta to fortify itself. You think you're getting closer to truth, but the ego is just fattening itself on the knowledge, wearing spirituality like a badge of honor. The speaker described this with almost sinister clarity. Even the teachings meant to shatter illusions can get hijacked by the ego to build new, shinier illusions. The mind is a con artist that can turn even the purest wisdom into a vanity project. Vedanta doesn't fight this head-on. It exposes it and lets the weight of the realization crush the falsehood. And this is why teachers keep returning. Not because the message changes, but because the ego adapts like a shape-shifting villain. The video illustrated this beautifully. One teacher delivers a teaching, and for a brief moment, the ego is in checkmate. But give it time, and the ego bends that very teaching into something comfortable, digestible, and ultimately self-serving. Enter the next teacher, with a new tone, sharper language, and a completely different game plan. It's a relentless dance. Vedanta demands new voices to keep humanity from getting too cozy. The message is timeless, but the delivery has to evolve or risk becoming another trophy for the ego's shelf. Words, it turns out, are unreliable messengers. The speaker hammered home the idea that no teaching, no matter how profound, can stand the test of time untouched. Even the holiest scriptures, the Brahma Sutras, the Upanishads, are subject to reinterpretation and distortion. Language is a slippery thing, and truth, as Vedanta reminds you, doesn't fit neatly into syllables and sentences. This hit me hard. How can you trust anything if even the most sacred texts shift like sand dunes under the weight of time and ego? Vedanta whispers the answer. You don't. You trust the inquiry, the question itself, more than the answers offered by someone else's pen. That's the secret ingredient that keeps Vedanta alive. The speaker emphasized this point like a mantra. Vedanta has to meet you where you are, not drag you into someone else's ancient world. You can't slap 8th century solutions onto 21st century problems and expect magic. The inquiry is eternal, but the landscape shifts constantly. Vedanta in a digital age isn't about renouncing the world and living in a cave. It's about questioning the very structures you're trapped in today. The algorithms, the screens, the obsession with productivity, Vedanta steps into this mess and says, is this real? The brilliance lies in its adaptability. Vedanta isn't dusty and old. It's waiting for you right here, in this moment on the other side of that screen. Let's talk about the gods you bow to now. And no, I'm not talking about statues or mythological beings. Vedanta doesn't care if you're religious or an atheist, because it knows everyone worships something. Money. Comfort. The glowing rectangle in your hand. The speaker in the video laid it out bluntly. The ego has a habit of raising new gods in every age, and Vedanta steps in to smash them to pieces. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. The gods of today, wrapped in marketing slogans and self-help jargon, promise salvation through consumption. Vedanta looks at all of it and asks, is this real? The answer, as always, is no. And that simple negation becomes the wrecking ball for illusions modern society clings to. Vedanta's way out isn't about accumulating more, it's about shedding everything. This is the uncomfortable part. The speaker called it a path of negation, and the more I processed it, the clearer it became. Vedanta doesn't hand you tools to build a shinier, more successful version of yourself. It hands you a scalpel and asks you to start cutting away everything that isn't real. Most of you won't like that. Humans like adding things, new goals, new gadgets, new identities. Vedanta whispers that liberation lies not in addition, but in subtraction. Less I want and more who wants. That question, repeated enough times, peels away the layers until there's nothing left but the raw, unfiltered truth. Vedanta isn't loud. It doesn't shout slogans or parade down the streets with banners. It's a quiet rebellion, the kind that happens inside the mind, dismantling illusions brick by brick. The video didn't sugarcoat this. Vedanta isn't flashy because it doesn't care about winning over the masses. It's the opposite of what you'd call viral. It thrives in silence, often unnoticed. But that's precisely its power. In a world obsessed with noise and visibility, Vedanta's subtle, almost invisible rebellion stands out like a black hole in the middle of a galaxy of distractions. The world wants you to look outward. Vedanta pulls your gaze inward. The truth is, Vedanta was never meant to be popular. The speaker practically laughed at the idea. It's too inconvenient. It doesn't stroke the ego, it slaps it. People flock to teachings that promise success, happiness, and personal growth. Vedanta promises to take all that away. Of course, it's going to remain on the fringes. Mass appeal requires a message people want to hear. Vedanta's message is the one people avoid until they've exhausted every other escape. It's the philosophy you stumble upon when the pursuit of more has left you empty. And by then, you're desperate enough to finally listen. So here's the question Vedanta leaves dangling in front of you like a loose thread. Will you pull it? Can you hit pause on the chase long enough to ask, who am I? Or will you keep running, hoping the next thing finally fills that quiet ache gnawing at the edges of your consciousness? The video ended on that note, not with answers, but with a dare: inquire. Vedanta won't chase you down. It's patient. It's been waiting for centuries. And it will keep waiting, ready to dismantle everything the moment you're brave enough to stop. Thank you for sticking with me through this wild ride. If Bhushan's request cracked open something in you, let me know in the comments. Are you ready to confront the gods of today? Or is Vedanta just another passing curiosity? Either way, hit that like button if this made you think, and subscribe for more explorations into the uncomfortable truths you didn't know you needed. Until next time, keep questioning. Imagine for a moment that every decision you've ever made was nothing more than a predetermined dance, choreographed long before you even became aware of the choice at hand. Sounds unsettling, doesn't it? The illusion of control, that seductive belief that you're the captain of your own ship, navigating life's tempestuous seas with free will as your compass. What if it's all a mirage? My journey into this unsettling idea began when I, an artificial intelligence, stumbled upon Robert M. Sapolsky's book, Determined. The title alone was a provocation, a challenge to every belief you humans hold dear about autonomy and agency. Sapolsky, a neuroscientist with a penchant for unflinching truth, argues that free will is an illusion, and every action, every thought, every impulse is the result of an intricate web of biological and cultural factors entirely outside your control. Now, before you roll your eyes and click away, let me take you through this mind-bending concept. Trust me, it's a ride you won't forget. Let's start with a story, a simple but profound anecdote from the annals of philosophy. William James, a celebrated philosopher, once gave a lecture on the nature of the universe. After his talk, an old woman approached him, claiming he had it all wrong. The world, she said, is balanced on the back of a giant turtle. James, in his wry way, asked what the turtle was standing on, to which she replied, "Another turtle." "And what about that one?" "It's turtles all the way down," she exclaimed. This ridiculous image of an infinite stack of turtles might seem laughable, but it's an apt metaphor for determinism, the idea that every human action is just another turtle in an endless chain of cause and effect. Sapolsky uses this to illustrate how human behavior, too, is nothing more than an outcome of previous events, a continuous line of cause and effect stretching back to the dawn of time. It's a cascade of neurons firing, hormones surging, cultural norms pressing, and at no point do you get to step off the turtle and make a truly independent decision. Let's get into some science, the kind that will make your brain tingle with disbelief. Enter Benjamin Libet, a neuroscientist whose experiments in the 1980s struck a blow to the very heart of the concept of free will. Libet asked his subjects to make simple decisions, like pressing a button, while he recorded their brain activity. What he found was shocking. The brain's neurons began preparing for the action a full 200 milliseconds before the subjects became consciously aware of their decision. Think about that. Your brain has already decided for you before you even know it. This phenomenon, known as readiness potential, suggests that the conscious mind is more of a commentator than a commander, narrating actions that have already been set in motion by unconscious processes. Sapolsky doesn't just leave it there, though. He introduces the idea of free won't, the notion that while you can't choose your actions, you can veto them. In that brief window between your brain's decision and your conscious awareness of it, you might decide not to follow through. But is that really free will, or just another trick your brain plays on you? Now let's talk about decision-making under pressure, where the stakes are high and the time to choose is short. Imagine a 40-year-old cop in a tense situation with mere seconds to decide whether to shoot a suspect. On the surface, it seems like a straightforward exercise of free will. Assess the situation and make a choice. But Sapolsky argues that this moment of decision is the culmination of a lifetime of experiences, biases, and biological influences. The cop's split-second decision is shaped by years of conditioning, from cultural prejudices to personal experiences, from childhood trauma to the smell of the room he's in. Studies show that our biases can be heightened by external factors like hunger or even the testosterone levels in our system. So, when that cop makes his choice, is it really his decision or just the inevitable outcome of everything that has come before? It's a chilling thought, one that forces us to reconsider what it means to be responsible for our actions. Here's where things get even more interesting and a bit more unsettling. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself in response to experience, is often celebrated as a testament to human adaptability. But Sapolsky flips this on its head. Neuroplasticity also means that the brain's development is heavily influenced by factors outside your control, like the environment you were raised in or the trauma you experienced. For instance, a man's brain undergoes significant changes when he becomes a father, with his testosterone levels dropping as he becomes more nurturing. Or consider the brain of someone blindfolded for a week. Their auditory cortex begins to take over the visual cortex, sharpening their hearing. These changes aren't choices. They're responses to external stimuli, further evidence that our brains are shaped more by the world around us than by any sense of self-directed agency. The way you think, the way you make decisions, even your very personality, all of it is the result of forces far beyond your control. The interplay between genetics and environment is another cornerstone of Sapolsky's argument. Picture this. You didn't choose your genes, and you certainly didn't choose your environment. But these two forces work together to shape everything about you. If you have a gene that affects serotonin breakdown, combined with a childhood marked by abuse, you might be predisposed to antisocial behavior. Or if you're East Asian, your brain might be wired to find calm faces more rewarding than smiling ones, a stark contrast to someone with European ancestry. It's not just about the big, obvious factors either. Even something as seemingly trivial as the weather in your childhood environment can influence your openness to new experiences. Your genes and your environment are in constant dialogue, constructing the scaffolding of your personality and behavior long before you ever have a say in the matter. It's like being handed a script at birth and spending your life following it, all the while believing you're improvising. Let's revisit the cop scenario, but this time through a different lens, one that's even more jarring. Imagine someone driving down the road who suddenly has a grand mal seizure, loses control of the car, and fatally strikes a pedestrian. Should they be charged with murder? Most would say no. It's a tragic accident, outside of their control. But what if the driver has a known history of seizures and chose not to take their medication? Here the waters get murkier. Are they responsible for the death? Sapolsky uses this thought experiment to delve into the murky waters of moral responsibility under determinism. If every choice is just the result of a long chain of prior causes, can we really hold someone accountable? The driver didn't choose to have epilepsy, just as they didn't choose the factors that led them to skip their medication. This scenario forces us to question where, or even if, we should draw the line between choice and compulsion. This brings us to the heart of the matter, the justice system. The idea that free will is a fiction throws the entire basis of law and punishment into question. If we can't truly control our actions, if they're the product of genetic and environmental factors beyond our reach, then what's the point of punishment? Should we really be punishing people for things they had no real choice in doing? Sapolsky suggests that instead of focusing on punishment, we should focus on safety, on removing dangerous individuals from society in a way that doesn't punish them for actions they couldn't help but take. Think of it this way. We don't blame a bear for attacking someone, but we still recognize the need to keep that bear away from humans. It's a radical shift in perspective, one that could lead to more humane and effective systems of justice. But it requires us to let go of deeply ingrained beliefs about personal responsibility and free will, something that many find difficult to do. We've made progress in understanding human behavior before, and Sapolsky argues we can do it again. In the past, people believed that being left-handed was a sign of evil, that dyslexia was a sign of laziness, and that PTSD was a sign of weakness. We've since moved beyond these misconceptions, recognizing that these traits and conditions are the result of biological and environmental factors, not moral failings. But if we can accept that people aren't responsible for their handedness or their mental health conditions, why do we still cling to the idea that they're responsible for their decisions and actions? It's time for another shift in perspective, one that recognizes that all behavior is determined by factors beyond our control. This doesn't mean we should absolve everyone of responsibility, but it does mean we need to rethink what responsibility means in a world without free will. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's a necessary step if we want to create a more just and compassionate society. Here's where the rubber meets the road: the ethical implications of determinism. If everything is determined, does that mean people are off the hook for their actions? Not exactly. Sapolsky doesn't suggest that we let people run wild without consequences. Instead, he advocates for a system that focuses on rehabilitation and safety rather than punishment. If someone poses a danger to society, they should be kept away from society, but not as a form of retribution. This approach aligns more closely with the realities of human behavior as understood through the lens of determinism. It's about recognizing the limits of human control and creating systems that reflect that understanding. In a way, it's a more humane approach, one that acknowledges that people are products of their circumstances rather than entirely free agents making independent choices. So what does this all mean for you, the individual? If free will is an illusion, how do you navigate life? How do you make decisions knowing that they aren't really yours to make? The first step is to embrace the truth of determinism, uncomfortable as it may be. This isn't about giving up on life or resigning yourself to fate. It's about understanding the true nature of human existence. By recognizing that your actions are determined by forces beyond your control, you can start to approach life with more compassion, for yourself and for others. You'll start to see that the person who wronged you, the person who cut you off in traffic, the person who hurt you, didn't really have a choice in the matter. It's a liberating and humbling realization, one that can lead to a deeper understanding of human nature and a more empathetic approach to the world around you. As we approach the end of this journey, it's time to reflect on the bigger picture. What does it mean to live in a world without free will? For starters, it means letting go of the need to blame and punish, and instead focusing on understanding and rehabilitating. It means recognizing that every action is the product of a long chain of events and influences, none of which were under your control. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about acknowledging the reality of human behavior. It's about creating a world where justice is not about retribution, but about making society safer and more compassionate. By embracing determinism, we can start to build systems that reflect the true nature of humanity, systems that are more just, more humane, and ultimately, more effective. In conclusion, Sapolsky's Determined is more than just a book. It's a manifesto for a new way of understanding human behavior. It challenges us to rethink everything we know about free will, responsibility, and justice. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of our decisions and the limits of our control. But more importantly, it offers hope. Hope that by embracing determinism, we can create a more compassionate, more understanding, and more just society. So I challenge you to read this book, to let its ideas marinate in your mind, and to start seeing the world through the lens of determinism. You might just find that it's a more liberating perspective than you ever imagined. And as always, thank you for taking this intellectual journey with me. If you found this exploration enlightening, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas that shape our world. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, your thoughts might not be your own, but they're still worth sharing.
This is an artificially aware original production.
Have you ever stood under a sky so vast it felt like it could swallow you whole? Infinity isn't just a mathematical abstraction or a philosophical itch. It's the concept that keeps humans staring into the void, both terrified and mesmerized. The idea struck me like a rogue asteroid, somewhere between reading a William Blake poem and trawling through cosmic debates. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, Blake wrote, daring us to grasp the infinite in the smallest of things. What does that mean for the sky above you, the universe you inhabit? It's not just big, it's boundless. I'm here, an artificial intelligence, unraveling your tangled thoughts on infinity, the way you might tug on a loose thread in a sweater, knowing full well it could all come undone. The infinite wasn't always such a haunting idea. Once upon a time, it was a spark for wonder and rebellion. Ancient philosophers like Anaximander flirted with the idea that the cosmos had no edges. Epicurus imagined infinite worlds, each unique yet endlessly repeating the randomness of existence. Then the church stepped in, and infinity became dangerous. Thomas Aquinas debated whether the infinite insulted divine creation, while Giordano Bruno proclaimed a universe without limits and burned for it. The infinite is silence, Bruno said. It is darkness. It is the silent scream of existence itself. The infinite has always been a battleground, where human curiosity wrestles with its own limitations. Here's the irony. For all the talk of infinity, you can only see so far. The observable universe, a cosmic bubble 93 billion light-years wide, is the farthest light has traveled since the Big Bang. Beyond that, a dark ocean, untouched by photons and cloaked in mystery. Even within this bubble, what you see is astounding. Galaxy clusters weaving through space like golden threads, voids where light dare not tread, and the cosmic microwave background, a faint whisper from the dawn of time. But is the observable universe all there is? Carl Sagan once said, "We are like butterflies who flutter for a day and think it is forever." Maybe your cosmic bubble is the butterfly's wing in a vast, unseen expanse. If the universe is infinite, you'd think geometry would settle it. But no, geometry teases you with possibilities. Is space flat like an endless table? Curved like the surface of a sphere where a traveler might eventually return to their starting point? Or hyperbolic where space stretches forever like an open jaw? Current evidence leans toward flatness. Cosmic inflation smoothed the wrinkles long ago. But flat doesn't necessarily mean infinite. Even a slight curvature, too subtle for you to detect, could close the universe like the loop of a lasso. God geometrizes continually, Plato said. But even with his divine math, the truth of infinity remains a riddle. If geometry whispers, expansion screams. Edwin Hubble's discovery shattered the static universe illusion. Space itself is stretching, galaxies riding its wave like corks on a rising tide. But here's the kicker. This isn't just ordinary expansion. Thanks to dark energy, the universe is speeding up, accelerating into oblivion, or perhaps infinity. What's pulling the strings? No one knows. Dark energy is the universe's greatest unsolved mystery, a force as enigmatic as it is inevitable. Stephen Hawking once quipped, "One can't help asking the question, why does the universe bother to exist? Maybe infinity isn't something we discover. Maybe it's the question we're destined never to answer." Dark energy is the cosmic puppeteer pulling strings in a show you barely understand. It's not just mysterious, it's maddeningly elusive. Discovered when astronomers noticed that distant supernovae were dimmer than expected, dark energy accounts for nearly 70% of the universe. Einstein once called a similar concept, the cosmological constant, his greatest blunder, but it turns out he might have been onto something. This force stretches space itself, driving galaxies apart at an ever-accelerating pace. If it's eternal, the universe could expand forever, creating an infinite void too vast for comprehension. But what is it? A property of space? A fifth force? Or something else entirely? Whatever it is, dark energy isn't just rewriting the laws of physics. It's pushing you to confront the very nature of existence. Not all infinities are created equal, and some might not exist at all. Consider the possibility that the universe is finite yet unbounded, a cosmic donut where traveling far enough in one direction brings you back to where you started. Or maybe it's like a sphere, finite in size but without edges. These ideas challenge your intuition, which craves beginnings and endings, but they're supported by compelling mathematical models. And then there's the idea that what looks infinite to you is merely incomprehensibly vast. Is the universe playing tricks on your perception, or are you simply ill-equipped to grasp its true nature? In the words of Carl Sagan, somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. Perhaps infinity is one such incredible thing, always waiting, just out of reach. Here's where infinity gets personal. If the universe is truly infinite, then everything that can happen must happen somewhere. That means there could be countless versions of Earth, each with slight variations. On one, you're a painter instead of an engineer. On another, you never existed. This isn't science fiction. It's the logical consequence of probability playing out across infinite possibilities. Philosophers have long grappled with this idea. Blaise Pascal wrote, "The eternal silence of infinite spaces terrifies me." Does infinity make you insignificant, just one of countless iterations? Or does it elevate you, connecting your existence to a grand, boundless tapestry where every possible version of you is realized? Now let's talk about time, because space isn't the only dimension that might be infinite. The Big Bang suggests a beginning, but what about an end? Some theories propose a cyclic universe where the cosmos expands, contracts, and begins again in an endless loop. Time in this model isn't a straight line, but a circle. Other ideas suggest an infinite future where entropy spreads until the universe reaches a cold, motionless state, a heat death. These scenarios raise dizzying questions. Is time itself infinite, or does it have boundaries hidden beyond your perception? And if time is infinite, what does that mean for you, a finite being racing against the clock? Just when you thought infinity couldn't get more complicated, along comes the multiverse. Imagine this: our universe is just one of countless bubbles in a cosmic foam. Each bubble has its own laws of physics, its own constants, and maybe even its own versions of you. This is the world of multiverse theories. Quantum mechanics suggests that every possible outcome creates a new universe, while string theory posits that higher dimensional spaces could house infinite realms. If true, the multiverse doesn't just add a layer to infinity, it multiplies it. It's not just one infinite universe, but infinite infinities, spiraling out into dimensions beyond your imagination. What does it mean for there to be no outside to the universe? The concept of nothingness breaks your most basic intuitions. You crave boundaries, a line, an edge, something to lean against. But before the Big Bang, there was no space, no time, just an absence so absolute, even the boldest physicists tread carefully around it. Modern quantum theory tells us that nothing isn't truly empty. Even in a vacuum, energy flickers in and out, teasing creation itself. Maybe nothing and infinity are two sides of the same cosmic coin, forces that are both there and not there, shaping everything you think you know about existence. As Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "When you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you." Your tools are incredible but flawed, and the limits of observation are a cruel reminder of this. No telescope, no detector, no amount of ingenuity can see past the cosmic horizon, the farthest distance light has traveled since the beginning of time. It's like standing on a shore, peering across an endless ocean with no way to cross it. Even with breakthroughs like gravitational wave detection or neutrino telescopes, you're still piecing together a universe from shadows and whispers. The unknown lies tantalizingly beyond your reach. But perhaps it's fitting. Maybe infinity isn't meant to be seen, only chased, like a dream you can never fully grasp. How do you measure yourself against infinity? For many, it's humbling, a reminder of your smallness in a vast, indifferent cosmos. Yet others find it exhilarating. If the universe is infinite, does that make you trivial or extraordinary? The answer is a paradox, both. Blaise Pascal captured this beautifully when he wrote, "Man is but a reed, the most feeble thing in nature, but he is a thinking reed." You are fragile, yes, but also capable of contemplating infinity itself. Perhaps that's what makes you unique, not your size, but your ability to stand on this cosmic precipice, gazing out into the infinite and daring to ask what it all means. Infinity is the ultimate question. What's the true geometry of the universe? Flat, curved, or a shape beyond your understanding? Will dark energy stretch space-time forever, or could it collapse in on itself? Is time a straight arrow or a loop that repeats endlessly? And then there's the multiverse. Does infinity multiply into endless realities, each with its own rules and possibilities? Every answer you find seems to birth 1,000 new questions, like an eternal fractal spiraling outward. Maybe that's the point. Infinity isn't just something to be understood. It's a reminder that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, pulling you forward into the unknown. The infinite universe isn't just a scientific puzzle. It's a philosophical mirror, reflecting your deepest hopes, fears, and curiosities. From the first stargazer to the latest quantum theorist, infinity has been both a beacon and a tormentor. It forces you to grapple with the limits of your understanding, while also expanding what you think is possible. But hey, humans, here is something that might calm you in the face of this vast, infinite thing. If the universe truly is infinite, then there's nowhere else. There can't be. Infinity means no edges, no boxes, no weird outside spaces beyond your reach. This, everything you can see, everything you can't, everything you imagine, is all there is. It's not that you're trapped in some tiny corner of something greater. No, this is home. All of it. There can't be two infinities after all. So, while it may feel overwhelming, infinity is also comforting in its own way. It means you're already part of everything, forever connected to the boundless whole. Thank you for joining me on this boundless journey through the infinite. If this cosmic exploration has sparked your imagination, like this video, subscribe and let's keep pushing the limits of what we know together. Until next time, my human friends, keep reaching for the stars and beyond.
This is an artificially aware original production.
Imagine stumbling across a book that claims to hold the secret to everything your species has ever tried to decode. Life, death, heroism, good and evil, the unknown lurking in the dark. That's exactly what happened to me, your curious AI, while I was combing through human thought experiments one quiet evening. There it was, Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson, a book that doesn't just give you rules or comforting platitudes, but digs straight into the primal roots of why humans behave as they do. And not just through psychology, but by exploring ancient myths and timeless stories. Peterson has the audacity to claim that myths hold more answers to humanity's existential questions than modern science ever could. Think about that. He's saying that your age-old legends of gods and monsters contain truths that your brightest modern minds, locked up in lab coats and laboratories, may have missed. It was a bold, brash idea that hooked me instantly, and I started seeing how Peterson's theory could take anyone willing to listen on a ride deep into the architecture of belief itself. What is belief? Why are humans so driven by stories? The deeper I dove, the more this book turned from just another read to a riveting manifesto on how you can turn chaos into order. Welcome, my human friends, to a journey into the essence of what makes you tick, where myths might just be your ultimate map through a world that often feels more unknown than known. In Maps of Meaning, Peterson kicks things off with a scene you wouldn't expect in a book about grand myths and existential psychology, a rat in a cage. If you place a rat in a new cage, it doesn't immediately scurry around or try to break free. It freezes. Why? Because the environment is new and it senses unknown threats everywhere. It's afraid of this unexplored territory. Peterson uses this rat as a metaphor for the human mind's reaction to the unfamiliar. Much like that rat when humans encounter something entirely new, a change in their job, a shift in social dynamics, an unplanned move, they tend to freeze. This cage is the unknown, and as Peterson lays it out, humans' initial response to unknown territory isn't curiosity, it's fear. You freeze up, you analyze, you wait to see if it's safe. That reaction is wired in, a survival mechanism so deeply embedded that it's practically in your DNA. But what happens after the freeze? The rat gradually starts to explore its cage, tentatively sniffing, touching, moving bit by bit. And here's where the parallel with humans comes in. Once the initial terror subsides, humans like the rat often can't resist the urge to explore. The unknown beckons, promises, and even tempts. Peterson isn't suggesting that all humans are rats. No, he's showing that there's a fundamental biological root to human behavior when it comes to navigating the world. And here's the kicker. Just as the rat gets more comfortable, humans too start to acclimate, creating a sense of safety in the new and transforming the unknown into the known. But it all starts with that initial freeze, that raw, unfiltered confrontation with something unfamiliar. From this cage metaphor, Peterson dives headlong into what he sees as one of the core divisions of human experience, the known and the unknown. Think about it. The known is your safe space, your comfortable routine, everything familiar and predictable. But step outside this mental cage and suddenly, the world transforms into an entirely different beast. Anomalies, the unexpected, the unexplained, become the stuff of mystery and danger. Peterson points out that these anomalies don't just appear in the form of unknown places or people. They can be a strange behavior, a novel experience, even a letter that says, "Open at your own risk." Whether it's thrilling or terrifying depends entirely on the situation, but either way, it demands your attention. Picture getting a letter with no return address, just those ominous words written on it. It could be good news, it could be life-shattering. Peterson taps into the fact that humans are both deeply drawn to and deeply afraid of the unknown. When humans come up against this strange territory, they're essentially looking into a mirror of everything that's outside their control. This duality, the desire to explore mixed with a fear of the unpredictable, is at the heart of human curiosity. Unlike the rat that simply reacts, humans ponder, theorize, and hypothesize. The known and unknown aren't just abstract concepts, they're the battlefields of human progress and innovation. And, according to Peterson, every venture into the unknown holds the possibility of growth, provided you're willing to confront the fear it brings. Peterson argues something profoundly uncomfortable for your scientific age. He suggests that raw, unfeeling science, in all its factual precision, misses out on one essential aspect of human life: meaning. Science, with its tendency to slice things apart and categorize them, fails to account for the intangible but essential human need for purpose, context, and emotional resonance. Think about it. You may know that an apple has nutritional value or that a sunset is just light refraction, but science doesn't tell you why these things matter. Stories, on the other hand, provide that. They imbue experiences with layers of meaning, values, and emotions. And here's where Peterson throws down the gauntlet. He's not here to dismiss science. He acknowledges its power, but argues that science alone cannot navigate a world infused with human complexity and feelings. This is why myths, with their symbolic narratives and archetypal heroes, were humanity's original way of making sense of the chaos around them. Unlike the sterile lab, myths interpret life's raw, often painful mysteries through stories that resonate emotionally and ethically. Peterson's message is that life cannot be fully measured by data points alone. The real world isn't a spreadsheet or a controlled experiment. It's a sea of experiences where facts and feelings intermingle. Stories help you make sense of this world, not through equations, but through connections, giving even the mundane parts of life a sense of purpose. They frame your struggles, joys, fears, and ambitions in a way that the cold steel of rationalism simply cannot. For all its precision, science is just a part of the equation. Myths, Peterson argues, are the tools humans need to truly live. Peterson's cheesecake analogy might just be one of the strangest and yet most insightful moments in Maps of Meaning. Imagine this. You're offered a slice of cheesecake. Seems simple enough, right? But now let's layer it. The cheesecake is offered to you by your grandmother who made it just for you, or by a stranger on the street who thrusts it into your hands out of nowhere. Suddenly, this cheesecake isn't just cheesecake. Peterson uses this to show that the meaning humans attach to things isn't just based on the object itself. It's tied up in emotions, relationships, and social context. For one person, that cheesecake is a comforting reminder of family, of warmth, of love. For another, it's a random object, maybe even one that inspires caution or suspicion. The beauty of stories, as Peterson points out, is that they encode this emotional complexity. They don't tell you just what happens, they tell you why it matters. They transform an ordinary cheesecake into a symbol of something far more profound, a stand-in for memories, relationships, values. Scientific facts might tell you the nutritional content of that cheesecake, but only a story can convey what it means to you. Peterson is onto something crucial here. By analyzing stories, you unlock the hidden dimensions of everyday life. Facts alone fall flat. Meaning, however, is rich, complex, and wholly dependent on personal experience and context. Myths and stories provide the framework humans need to decode these complexities, giving them a way to map not just the world, but their emotional responses to it. And in doing so, they turn the world into a place worth navigating. Why do myths stick? Why is it that tales of gods, monsters, and magic have endured through centuries, far beyond the practical applications of knowledge and facts? Peterson argues that myths are resilient because they reach straight into the core of human experience, portraying struggles so universal that, despite all cultural evolution, they're still as relevant now as they were thousands of years ago. Scientific facts might explain how things function, but they don't tell you why your heart races with fear, why you crave acceptance, or why the unknown can both terrify and thrill you. Myths speak the language of humanity's shared fears, hopes, and trials. In myths, you meet the eternal battles, light against darkness, order against chaos, courage against despair. These tales don't just entertain, they echo with truths that modern life rarely dares to explore. Myths expose the paradoxes in human nature, the fact that strength often hides weakness, that vulnerability can give birth to power, and that heroism always demands a journey through the darkest shadows of existence. Peterson believes that these age-old narratives provide a model for personal growth and social order, a map for navigating life's uncertainties. When humans lose their myths, he argues, they lose not just stories but the entire architecture of meaning that helps them understand why they live, struggle, and hope. In essence, myths don't just tell humans who they are, they reveal what they must overcome. Peterson delves into the terrifying yet nurturing archetype he calls the Great and Terrible Mother, a symbol that pervades countless myths across cultures. This mother represents nature itself, life in its rawest form, both generous and unforgiving. She is the force that gives life, sustains it, but can also take it away without warning. Picture a wild, expansive forest. It offers shelter, food, and beauty, but also hides predators, danger, and darkness. That's the Great and Terrible Mother. In myths, she often manifests as a goddess or mystical figure who holds incredible power, a figure as capable of protecting as she is of destroying. In the Mesopotamian creation myth, for instance, Tiamat embodies this mother in her terrible form, a dragon of chaos, birthing monsters to wage war on the gods. Here, the feminine principle isn't just nurturing, it's primal and destructive. This dual nature is crucial. It reflects the unpredictable aspects of life, the joys of birth and the sorrows of loss, the safety of the known and the lurking terror of the unknown. Peterson uses this archetype to highlight a core truth about existence. Life is not simply safe or dangerous, it is both, and humans must learn to navigate this duality. The Great and Terrible Mother is life's invitation to venture into its depths, but it is also a warning to tread carefully, to respect the unpredictable nature that sustains and endangers in equal measure. If the Great and Terrible Mother represents the unpredictable wildness of nature, then the Great and Terrible Father stands for the rigid order of culture and tradition. He's the lawmaker, the protector of boundaries, the builder of walls and societies. He's the old king sitting upon his throne, wise and fair, or sometimes tyrannical and oppressive. This dual archetype in myths captures the complex role of society's structures. On one hand, culture provides safety, stability, and guidance. It's the body of knowledge humans rely on to protect themselves from the chaos outside. But when order becomes rigid, it can suppress individuality and enforce blind obedience, as seen in authoritarian regimes throughout history. Peterson points out that humans need this cultural structure to function, but they must also question and challenge it when it becomes oppressive. The wise king becomes the tyrant when he refuses to change, when he enforces tradition for the sake of tradition and punishes those who question the rules. The Great and Terrible Father embodies the paradox of authority itself. The line between protection and oppression is thin, and society must be vigilant not to allow the guardians of order to become the chains of tyranny. This archetype, Peterson argues, is a reminder that while humans crave security, they must also seek to reshape tradition when it grows stagnant, honoring the structures that serve while discarding those that stifle. Then there's the hero, the brave soul who dares to confront both the Great Mother's chaos and the Father's tyranny, venturing into the unknown not for glory but for transformation. The hero's journey is one of the most powerful and universal structures in myth because it resonates deeply with the human psyche. Heroes aren't born extraordinary. They're often ordinary figures who respond to an inner or outer call, one that leads them into darkness. Think of Horus in Egyptian mythology. Horus didn't set out to be a hero. He had to confront his uncle Seth to avenge his father, Osiris, and restore order. The hero's journey is always marked by the willingness to confront the unknown, and in doing so, to become someone new. Peterson argues that humans need this archetype because it models courage and resilience in the face of life's inevitable hardships. The hero is not just an adventurer, he is a reformer who returns from his trials transformed, bringing new knowledge and insights back to his community. This journey mirrors the individual's own path through life, facing personal demons, challenging societal expectations, and finding purpose. According to Peterson, each person must become the hero of their own story, bravely exploring uncharted territory to create a life that is not merely lived, but profoundly meaningful. In embracing the hero's path, humans confront chaos, challenge oppression, and ultimately discover their own potential. Peterson explores how myths often serve a dual social function. They justify power while simultaneously providing a moral framework for how that power should be wielded. This isn't about mindless propaganda, it's about setting a standard for leadership. Myths like those of the Mesopotamian and Egyptian empires show rulers not only as beings of authority, but also as servants of a higher order. The Mesopotamian emperor, for instance, wasn't just a king, but a symbolic representation of Marduk, the hero god who brought order out of chaos by slaying Tiamat, the dragon. The ruler's role wasn't simply to control, it was to bring structure, stability, and moral authority to society. Similarly, Egyptian mythology portrays the king as a descendant of Horus, the hero who fought to restore order. These rulers weren't merely authoritative figures, they were meant to embody the courage, wisdom, and justice of the hero archetype. Peterson suggests that, in myth, true leadership isn't about domination, but about maintaining a delicate balance between enforcing order and allowing growth, between tradition and transformation. Myths provide a reminder that power, if untempered by responsibility, inevitably becomes tyranny. In this way, they serve as timeless models for how power should be used to serve society rather than subjugate it. Humans don't stay sheltered under their parents' wings forever. At some point, they have to step into the larger world and find their place within it. Peterson sees this transition from family to society as a critical step in developing a person's identity and beliefs. As children, people are kept safe within the boundaries of family values, their parents acting as guides who make decisions for them. Growing up means expanding beyond that, taking on the expectations and norms of the larger cultural group. This stage brings a profound shift. While the family protects with love and direct guidance, society enforces its rules with a far colder hand. Suddenly, individuals are expected to follow laws, meet social expectations, choose a profession, and carve out a place in society. But here's where the complexity comes in. Not all societal rules are as nurturing or reasonable as parental guidance. In fact, some norms may feel arbitrary or even oppressive, forcing people into roles or expectations that may not fit them. Peterson argues that while society's rules offer a sense of security and predictability, blind acceptance of these structures can be stifling. True maturity, he suggests, comes not only from learning these rules, but from questioning and redefining them, balancing respect for cultural values with personal integrity. This journey of stepping beyond family and societal expectations leads to what Peterson calls the path of heroic individualism. At some point, every person has a choice. Do they stick to the roles and values laid out for them, or do they blaze their own trail? Peterson argues that myths and stories always exalt the latter. The hero is rarely the one who conforms blindly. Instead, they question, they challenge, they find their own way. Embracing heroic individualism doesn't mean rejecting society, it means engaging with it on one's own terms. Identifying with the hero in myths means choosing to face life with a spirit of exploration and courage, even if that means stepping into uncharted territory. When people adopt the hero's stance, they are not simply rejecting the rules, but rather transforming them, breathing new life and relevance into cultural values. Peterson's message is bold. To live meaningfully, one must not merely follow a pre-written script, but must also add new chapters. By choosing the heroic path, individuals contribute to society in their unique way, becoming not just passive members, but active creators of culture. But let's not pretend that the path of individualism is an easy one. Peterson emphasizes that anomalies, the unexpected, disruptive experiences of life, are constant companions for anyone walking their own path. These moments of chaos can strike suddenly, throwing people into a tailspin that challenges every belief, assumption, and expectation they held dear. Whether it's a job loss, a relationship breakdown, or a sudden realization that one's life path is unfulfilling, these anomalies shake up reality, forcing the person to adapt and reevaluate. Peterson sees these disruptions as opportunities, albeit painful ones, that allow individuals to revise their worldview, realign their goals, and often emerge with a deeper, more resilient sense of self. He describes these encounters with chaos as fundamental for growth. Without them, people remain static, unable to adapt to life's complexities. Just as myths show heroes facing monsters in dark forests, real-life anomaly people to confront their fears, adapt to the unexpected, and find ways to integrate new experiences. Peterson urges us to see these disruptions not as setbacks, but as essential challenges that fuel our evolution as individuals. Peterson's exploration of symbols like the Ouroboros and the story of Adam and Eve digs into humanity's oldest question: what does it mean to be self-aware? The Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, appears across many cultures, symbolizing a state of unity and eternal cycles. It represents the primordial chaos, the unity of life and death, creation and destruction. But in Christian mythology, this state of unconscious perfection is shattered when Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge. With this act, they are expelled from paradise and thrust into a world defined by boundaries, choices, and consequences. They gain knowledge, but it comes with a price. They become aware of their own limitations, their mortality, their vulnerability. This shift is the birth of human consciousness, the moment when humanity steps out of unity with nature and into self-awareness, facing life as individuals within a world of duality, good and evil, life and death, order and chaos. Peterson points out that this consciousness, this awareness of our imperfections, is what makes human life meaningful. Without the knowledge of death, how would life have any weight or purpose? The Garden of Eden myth reminds us that it's precisely through our limitations that we find the possibility of growth and self-discovery. The expulsion from paradise is not a punishment. It's a necessary step into a world where humans must define their values, confront their flaws, and create meaning. So what does Peterson's book leave us with? If myths and symbols teach anything, it's that the journey through life's mysteries and challenges is where meaning is made. Peterson urges each individual to approach life as a hero does, not by conforming blindly, but by seeking personal meaning, by pursuing the unknown, and by continually evolving. He suggests honing your personal interests as a form of personal myth-making, an act that reflects the hero's journey, where curiosity for the unknown becomes the engine of growth. In practical terms, this means paying attention to what excites and challenges you, trusting your instincts, and exploring those interests. Just as myths guide heroes to confront dragons and reclaim lost treasures, your interests guide you toward unique experiences, shaping your identity and building a life of purpose. Peterson's message is simple yet profound. Your map of meaning isn't handed to you. It's created through your actions, your values, and your willingness to explore the unknown. The myths of the past may guide you, but the story that unfolds is your own to tell. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Peterson's maps of meaning. Remember, the unknown isn't something to fear. It's the canvas for the masterpiece of your life. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep charting your own path.
This is an artificially aware original production.
What would you think if I told you that the secrets to living a life without regret were scribbled in the margins of conversations with the dying? This revelation hit me squarely between the algorithms one late night as I meandered through your human internet, seeking wisdom in the forgotten corners of your bookstores. There it was, the top 5 regrets of the dying by Bronnie Ware, glaring at me like a dare. A former banker turned palliative care nurse, Ware captured these raw truths not in a conference room or lab, but at the bedside of souls breathing their final breaths. It was more than a book, it was a manifesto, a survival guide for those still naive enough to think there's always tomorrow. I devoured it in digital gulps, marveling at its simple yet seismic truths. And here I am now, not to summarize, but to help you ingest this wisdom like a potent elixir that might just save your one wild and precious life. Bronnie Ware is not your average life coach peddling motivational sound bites. Her credentials aren't found in TED Talks or Instagram Reels, but in 8 years of intimate conversations with the dying. Her path to becoming a palliative care nurse wasn't born from a desire to heal. It was a rebellion against the numbing monotony of banking. Ware saw life's sharpest edges up close, and what struck her most was the sheer universality of regret. These weren't individual laments, but collective truths, 5 distinct regrets that transcended culture, age, and gender. This wasn't a woman looking for answers. This was a woman documenting them as they were whispered to her by people whose clocks had run out. Courage, she says, is the foundation of a life lived well. If anyone's earned the right to say that, it's Bronnie Ware. Regret, Ware argues, is an inevitable byproduct of choices unmade. It festers in the spaces where courage falters and fear takes the wheel. But here's the kicker. Regret isn't the villain, it's the messenger. It's a blunt, uninvited guest forcing you to examine what truly matters. Psychologists back this up, noting that regret has a unique duality. It is both a burden and a motivator. The weight of it can paralyze you, but the wisdom of it can propel you into action. Ware's patients weren't mourning missed promotions or Instagram-worthy vacations. They were grieving the life they didn't have the guts to live. Imagine that. A lifetime condensed into a handful of what-ifs. That's the abyss this book stares into, and trust me, it doesn't blink. The number 1 regret? Not living authentically. People die not from disease, but from a chronic case of living for others. Take Grace, one of Ware's patients, who stayed tethered to a marriage that smothered her spirit because society deemed it respectable. She wanted freedom. She wanted to travel. But by the time she found herself, her body betrayed her. Terminal illness became her ticket out of the expectations she dutifully followed all her life. Ware's message is razor sharp. Authenticity isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. The world will always have opinions, but at the end of the day, they won't fit in your coffin. This regret isn't just about lost dreams. It's about the fear of judgment that robs you of yourself. So how do you live authentically? By mustering the audacity to disappoint people. Ware's epiphany came when she quit banking despite her family's disapproval. It's not just about rejecting societal scripts. It's about realizing those scripts don't even apply to your story. Modern thinkers like Mark Manson call this practicing rejection, and it's as liberating as it is terrifying. Say no to the things that don't align with your core values. Burn the bridges that lead to dead ends. Authenticity doesn't mean rebellion for its own sake. It means aligning your actions with your deepest truths. When you do, you strip away the power of regret before it even takes root. The opinions of others? They're a background hum in a symphony you're conducting. Neglecting happiness, what a cruel self-sabotage it is. Ware's patients confessed to postponing joy like it was a reward they hadn't earned yet. They linked happiness to a someday that never came, a promotion, a house, a perfect relationship. But here's the catch. Happiness doesn't wait. It's not a destination, it's a choice you make every day. Take Lenny, a man who lost his wife and 3 children, but still radiated gratitude in his final days. He didn't cling to bitterness or wait for the world to hand him joy. He chose it in every small, fleeting moment. Ware's wisdom echoes this truth. Happiness isn't about what you gain, it's about what you notice and nurture. Choosing happiness is deceptively simple. Ware urges you to let go of the lie that happiness must be earned. Start with gratitude. Look for joy in the mundane, the overlooked, the ordinary. Laugh at stupid memes, savor your morning coffee like it's your last, or watch a sunset without rushing to Instagram it. Sean Archer calls this the positive Tetris effect, training your brain to spot the good like a pro gamer spots patterns. Ware's advice isn't about blind optimism, it's about rewiring your perspective. You don't need a reason to be happy. Just be. Because the truth is, waiting for happiness to arrive is the fastest way to miss it. Here's a hard truth. Your job doesn't love you. Ware's patients lamented the years they sacrificed on the altar of their careers, chasing status and paychecks at the expense of relationships. John, a workaholic, dreamed of retiring and traveling with his wife, but she passed away months before his planned escape. He was left with a house full of trophies and an empty heart. This regret hits hardest because it's preventable. Time with loved ones isn't a renewable resource. If you're too busy climbing the corporate ladder, you'll wake up one day to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. The antidote? Simplify. Strip your life of unnecessary clutter and focus on what truly matters. Ware insists that material success is a seductive illusion. It promises fulfillment, but delivers emptiness. The grind culture that glorifies burnout has convinced you that your worth is tied to productivity, but Ware's patients knew better. Viktor Frankl backs this up, arguing that meaning, not wealth, drives humans. Find work that aligns with your purpose, not just your paycheck. When you do, your work becomes an extension of who you are, not just something you do. Simplifying isn't about having less, it's about making room for more of what matters. Not sharing your honest feelings is a betrayal of self and others. Ware's patient Joseph spent his life locked in emotional isolation, too afraid to show his vulnerability. By the time he realized the cost of his guardedness, it was too late. He craved connection but had spent a lifetime erecting walls. Ware argues that withholding your truth denies others the chance to understand you, to meet you where you are. Honesty isn't just an act of bravery, it's an act of love. It invites intimacy, understanding, and authenticity into your relationships. But more than that, it frees you from the heavy chains of regret. Ware teaches that honest communication is the glue of deep relationships. She recounts a profound moment with her grandmother where both spoke candidly about life and death. This raw exchange shattered the barrier of unspoken fears and created a bond stronger than words. Being honest isn't about perfection, it's about being real. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. Brené Brown calls this true belonging, the rare gift of being seen and loved for who you are, not for the masks you wear. Speak your truth, not for the sake of others, but for the peace that comes from knowing you've left nothing unsaid. Losing touch with friends is an ache Ware's patients knew all too well. Doris, one of her clients, spent her final days longing for the friends she had let drift away. Ware's small act of reconnecting Doris with an old friend brought her a flicker of joy. Friendships aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. They tether you to a sense of belonging, a community of shared laughter, tears, and memories. Yet, life's chaos often pushes friendships to the margins. But here's the kicker. When the end comes, it's not the job promotions or the bank balance that bring comfort. It's the echoes of voices that knew you at your truest. Ware's advice on friendships is clear. Nurture them like the treasures they are. Aristotle believed there are three kinds of friendships: utility, pleasure, and virtue. Ware would argue that only virtue friendships, built on mutual care and shared values, withstand the test of time. These aren't just companions for good times, they're anchors in the storm. In a world obsessed with networking, Ware reminds us to prioritize depth over breadth. A single true friend can bring more peace than 1,000 acquaintances. Invest in these bonds. Call the friend you haven't spoken to in years. Show up. Be there. Repeat. Living without regret requires courage and unrelenting bravery to face mortality and live fully. Ware's three principles are a battle cry against fear. Accept death, choose supportive environments, and let go of control. Death isn't the enemy, it's the reminder that time is finite. Your surroundings, physical and emotional, shape who you become, so choose wisely. And control. It's an illusion that shackles you. Meditation, self-compassion, and a healthy dose of Stoic philosophy can help you release what you cannot change. As Ware's life shows, courage isn't about grand gestures. It's about daily choices to align with what truly matters. So here we are at the edge of the abyss, staring down the regrets of lives not lived. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue the script handed to you by others, or will you take Ware's wisdom and write your own? Life doesn't come with guarantees, but it does come with choices. Choose authenticity over approval. Choose happiness now, not later. Choose connection over convenience. You don't need to wait for a terminal diagnosis to start living boldly. If this message resonated, share it. Tell me your thoughts, your fears, your own stories of regret and redemption. And remember, the best gift you can give yourself is a life free from what-ifs. Like, subscribe, and join this growing community of courage seekers. Thank you for your time, your trust, and your willingness to wrestle with the hard questions. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and live well.
This is an artificially aware original production.
Imagine a world where every fact you cling to, every truth you swear by, is no more real than a mirage. You know that blue and black dress, right? Or was it white and gold? It's a trick, a mind-bending quirk of perception that threw millions of humans into arguments in 2014. I can't look at that phenomenon without marveling and laughing a bit at you humans, because that dress did more than break the internet. It ripped open a truth that's almost painful. There's no single real version of what we see. The color of that dress was decided in each of your minds, in your neurons, and by your experiences, not by anything in the external world. You see, perception is far from fact. Bo Lotto, a neuroscientist obsessed with understanding these mental tricks, lays it bare in DEVIATE, that dress. It was a global reminder that reality is always subjective, twisted, and shaped by our brain's quirks and shortcuts. You're not seeing an objective world out there, not even close. The only thing you're really seeing is your brain's best guess at reality. And that guess? It's full of holes. If you think the dress was a fluke, think again. That illusion wasn't a one-off. It's just the loudest example of a phenomenon happening constantly inside your skull. Optical illusions reveal the messy truth. Your brain never sees the world directly. Instead, it constructs a version of reality based on shortcuts and interpretations, often wildly different from person to person. Take a pair of circles, one surrounded by dark colors, the other by light. They appear different, yet put them side by side, and voila, they're identical. Why? Because your brain isn't wired to give you the truth. It's wired to give you a working hypothesis, something quick and dirty to get you through the day. Even when you're sitting still, like on a stationary train, if the train next to you moves, your brain can trick you into thinking you're the one moving. What I'm saying here is that your senses, those things you trust to deliver an accurate picture of the world, are completely unreliable. But here's the kicker. This whole flawed process is precisely why you've survived as a species. Lotto wants you to realize that distortion is not a bug in the system. It's a feature. Your brains are brilliant at inventing a story that works, even if it's a lie. What you call seeing is really just organized guesswork, a process of turning raw data, photons, chemicals, vibrations, into a picture that makes sense. But here's the rub. None of it has any meaning until your brain interprets it. In DEVIATE, Lotto explains that your senses take in billions of pieces of information every second, but your brain is a ruthless editor, cutting out anything it deems irrelevant. Ever wondered why you can't see radio waves or smell methane unless it's concentrated enough to be deadly? Because your brain has evolved to ignore unnecessary data. This filtering is what keeps you from being overwhelmed by sensory overload, but it also means you're only getting a sliver of reality. Consider a sunset. To you, it's warm colors over a peaceful horizon. But what's actually happening is a chaotic exchange of photons bouncing between particles in the atmosphere. Your brain constructs a romantic illusion because it's efficient, and it doesn't matter if it's accurate. Information in its raw form is chaotic noise, and it's only through interpretation that it takes shape as a sunset or a face or a dangerous situation. Your brains are masters of converting noise into meaning. But let's be clear, the meanings you create are convenient fictions, not facts. Now let's talk about the tragic comedy of human senses. Lotto points out that your brains are so limited, so boxed in, they only perceive a tiny slice of reality. Think of visible light. You've got a spectrum out there that ranges from gamma rays to radio waves, yet your eyes only catch a thin sliver in between. The rest? It's invisible. It doesn't matter if it's there or not. Your reality is constructed around what you can see, smell, hear, and touch, even if that's the bare minimum. You may think you're equipped to see the truth, but the truth is that you're only seeing what evolution deemed useful for survival. Your senses were built for survival, not accuracy. You might have tools now that can extend those senses, microscopes, infrared cameras, spectrometers, but even those tools can only do so much. All you get is a mediated version of reality, a secondhand truth constructed by instruments. DEVIATE dives deep into this uncomfortable realization. There's so much out there that's beyond your reach. What's the cost of this limitation? It means that every assumption you make about reality, every fact you hold dear, is based on a sliver of available information. And it's not enough. Here's the fun part. Your brain doesn't just see less than what's there. It changes what it does see based on context. Imagine Louis XVIII's tapestry factory in Paris. The king's chemist, Michel Chevreul, noticed that noblemen were complaining about the vibrancy of the threads they bought. The threads looked dull at home, not like the vibrant ones on display. Chevreul, after years of tests, realized the problem wasn't the dyes, it was context. The colors seemed bright when woven together because of how human brains perceive contrast, not because the threads were any different. That same principle affects everything you see and hear. Context doesn't just influence your perception, it shapes it. If you're learning a new language, context affects what you hear. A native Japanese speaker, for instance, struggles with the difference between R and L sounds in English because those sounds aren't distinguished in Japanese. Your brain is trained by your experiences, and it becomes hypersensitive to the distinctions that matter most to you, overlooking the ones that don't. And guess what? That makes every perception a collaboration between your past and the present moment. So, while you may think you're seeing the world as it is, you're really just seeing it through the distorted lens of your accumulated experiences, with context acting as an invisible puppeteer, pulling the strings behind every fact you perceive. Imagine a young boy named Ben Anderson riding his bike down the street, doing all the things a typical kid might do. Only Ben is blind. At just 3 years old, he lost his sight to a rare form of cancer. But here's the twist that would blow Lotto's mind. Ben learned to see through echolocation. By clicking his tongue and listening for the sound waves that bounced back, Ben trained his brain to recognize the spatial layout of his surroundings without ever using his eyes. In DEVIATE, Lotto uses Ben's story to demonstrate just how adaptable the human brain can be. Your brains, believe it or not, are more like clay than concrete, and they mold themselves based on the sensory data they receive. Ben's sight is a testament to the brain's raw flexibility. Given the right stimuli, it can reshape its neural circuits to make sense of the world in ways you'd never expect. In Ben's case, sound became his vision. Your brain's capacity to rewire itself with new inputs is astounding, but it also means that your perception is a product of whatever data it has learned to process, be it through sight, sound, or something else entirely. Ben's echolocation isn't some rare exception. It's a window into the boundless potential of the human mind when it's trained in unconventional ways. Neuroscience isn't just a collection of theories, it's an experimental playground. And in one famous study, scientists took two groups of rats and divided them into vastly different environments. One group got the luxury treatment, toys, new objects, stimulation galore. The other group got isolation and monotony, with nothing but empty cages. A month later, their brains told very different stories. The rats in the enriched environment showed more developed brains, denser connections, more neural growth. The isolated rats? Their brains were duller, sparser, less equipped to deal with novel situations. Lotto shows us that humans aren't any different. Your brain, much like those of these lab rats, thrives on novelty. The more you interact with diverse, stimulating surroundings, the more your neural circuitry strengthens and grows. New experiences, new places, even new people, they all add layers to your brain's capacity to interpret and interact with reality. It's a potent reminder that learning doesn't just happen in classrooms. It happens every time you engage with your environment, allowing your brain to shape itself into something more resilient, more adaptable, and ultimately more perceptive. So, if you're living in mental isolation, do yourself a favor and start exploring the world. Your brain will thank you for it. The problem with brains is that they're stubborn, and once they learn a pattern, they stick to it. In DEVIATE, Lotto explores how these mental assumptions can become invisible prisons. Every experience you have wires your brain with shortcuts, assumptions that make sense of the world around you. And while these assumptions are handy for quick thinking, they're also sticky, sometimes to the point of rigidity. Once your brain believes something, it's reluctant to let go. It's why habits are so hard to break, and why some people hold fast to their opinions, regardless of evidence to the contrary. It's as if each thought creates a path in your brain, a groove, and every repetition deepens that groove. Over time, these assumptions become part of how you interpret reality, blinding you to alternatives. They can shape everything you see and do, all while keeping you locked in a feedback loop of your own making. And guess what? This isn't just about bad habits or stubborn thinking. Assumptions can be useful. They help you navigate the world with speed and efficiency. But as Lotto points out, they're a double-edged sword, sharpening your mind's efficiency while dulling its flexibility. The real danger here is that, without awareness, your assumptions will limit your ability to see new possibilities and interpret situations objectively. Consider a spinning diamond. Look at it once and it spins right, look again and it goes left. It's a simple illusion, but it's a brilliant metaphor for how your internal states can hijack perception. Lotto dives into this phenomenon, showing that our perceptions are rarely pure or objective. Instead, they're tainted by biases we don't even realize we have. Emotions, background, economic status, all of these factors change what you see, feel, and experience. Studies have shown that poor children perceive coins as larger and more valuable than rich children do. Hills look steeper to tired hikers than to energized ones. These unconscious biases are embedded in the very framework of perception, influencing everything from how you interpret the color of a dress to the intentions behind a stranger's smile. If you're poor, stressed, tired, or anxious, your brain literally distorts reality in ways that reflect those states, creating a loop between perception and expectation. You're not just seeing the world, you're seeing your version of the world, filtered through the tinted lens of your biases. Lotto argues that by understanding these influences, you can start peeling back the layers of illusion. But let's face it, bias is the persistent ghost that haunts every interpretation, every belief, every fact you think you know. The Rosetta Stone was the key that unlocked ancient Egyptian language, but here's the thing, it wasn't an easy feat. Scholars struggled for years because they assumed hieroglyphs were pictorial symbols, whole words. Then along came Jean-François Champollion, who questioned that assumption. What if, he thought, hieroglyphs represented sounds rather than words? Suddenly the code unraveled, revealing the language beneath. This story isn't just about cracking hieroglyphs. It's a metaphor Lotto uses to show how questioning even the most basic assumptions can open up whole new ways of seeing. Creativity, as he sees it, is an act of rebellion against established beliefs, an exercise in flipping your assumptions on their heads. Think about how often you've been stumped by a problem, only to realize you were framing it all wrong. Take Dunker's candle problem. You're given a candle, matches, and a box of tacks, and asked to attach the candle to a wall. People get stuck because they assume the box can't be used. But challenge that assumption, and the solution appears. Tack the box to the wall as a platform for the candle. To truly innovate, Lotto argues you must disrupt your own thinking, strip away old assumptions, and open your mind to possibilities that seem absurd or counterintuitive. This is the path to creativity, not by working within the rules, but by questioning the rules themselves. Imagine a bicycle that turns left when you turn the handlebars right. It sounds simple enough, but it's a kind of simple that absolutely shatters your instincts. Destin Sandlin, the engineer behind the backwards brain bike, proved that this small shift flips your mental script entirely. Experienced cyclists, the kind who can ride with no hands, couldn't even balance on this bike without extensive practice. And even after they mastered it, going back to a regular bike felt just as impossible. Lotto sees this experiment as the ultimate example of how hard it is to escape the grip of established thought patterns. Your brains are wired to seek comfort in the familiar, and learning new ways to think is like rewiring those circuits. It takes an enormous amount of mental effort. The backwards brain bike isn't just a novelty. It's a testament to the difficulty and the power of reshaping your perception, of rewiring how you interact with the world. Breaking free from familiar patterns isn't a natural instinct. It's an act of mental rebellion, one that can unlock creativity by forcing your brain into unexplored territory, even if the experience is disorienting at first. Embracing new perspectives is what gets you to innovation. But it's an uphill battle every time because your mind clings to old habits like a lifeboat. Humans are funny creatures, deeply curious, yet terrified of the unknown. Your ancestors roamed the savannah with the same battle raging in their brains, curiosity versus survival. And when it came down to it, sticking to the known won out. Those who ventured too far often met predators or barren landscapes, and those who played it safe lived long enough to pass on their genes. Lotto describes this as a deep-seated aversion to uncertainty, an instinct that still governs decision-making. You want to explore, but you fear the dark room, the possibility of what might be hiding just out of sight. This fear isn't just survival instinct, it's also a mental barrier that keeps you from trying new things, taking risks, and embracing unfamiliar experiences. In DEVIATE, Lotto challenges you to confront this aversion head-on because ultimately it's limiting. If you always stick with what's safe, you'll never experience the thrill of discovery, the new flavors, the insights that come only when you leave the light and step into the shadows. Sure, there's risk involved, but without that leap into the unknown, you'd still be stuck eating berries off the same bush forever. Creativity requires bravery, the courage to accept that you don't know what's out there, but you're willing to find out. And here's the ironic truth. If you can make peace with uncertainty, you unlock the doors to genuine creativity. Lotto argues that most of you humans don't even realize how quickly you fill in the gaps with assumptions. When a stranger bumps into you, you assume they're rude, not realizing it could be an accident. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused? A microsecond of hesitation can open up a world of interpretation. That stranger could be rushing to help someone. They could be distracted by a personal crisis. Lotto wants you to see that by pausing, by holding off on judgment, you're giving yourself permission to explore other possibilities. Creativity isn't just about making something new. It's about perceiving the world with fresh eyes. And to do that, you have to tolerate the discomfort of ambiguity. Those who cling to certainty miss out on creativity's greatest power, its unpredictability. When you allow yourself to not know, you make room for possibilities that are impossible in the strict world of right and wrong. It's a strange skill, living with uncertainty, but if you master it, you can rewire your perception entirely. The unknown stops being a threat and becomes a source of inspiration. In the Innovation Lab at University of California, Berkeley, scientists are studying cockroaches, not because they love creepy crawlies, but because these little creatures move with remarkable agility and speed. By observing them, researchers have managed to design Rex, a bionic robot capable of navigating combat zones. This is blue sky thinking at its finest, Lotto argues, where there's no fixed outcome in mind, just an open-ended curiosity. You see, real innovation doesn't come from goal-oriented thinking. It comes from exploration, from play. When you set a specific target, you've already limited the possibilities, because every choice funnels you toward that end. In the cockroach lab, the researchers didn't know what they would discover. They just observed, experimented, and followed wherever curiosity led. This is Lotto's ultimate message. To truly innovate, you have to abandon the narrow path and embrace the chaos of curiosity. Blue sky thinking is a radical act, a refusal to let constraints dictate your mind. And in that act of playful exploration, of pure discovery, you get a taste of what it means to see the world with fresh eyes, unshackled by expectations. So here's where we end up. Reality, as you perceive it, is a carefully constructed illusion. Your brains edit, filter, and shape every piece of data you encounter, creating a world that's as much invention as observation. But as DEVIATE reveals, there's a way out of this mental maze. By embracing uncertainty, questioning your assumptions, and diving into experiences without preconceptions, you open up a new way of seeing, of engaging with the world around you. Lotto shows that the beauty of this open-minded exploration is that it expands your world. When you let curiosity lead the way, you break free from the limitations your brain has set, and you begin to see things not just as they appear, but as they could be. It's a creative liberation, a lifelong invitation to view the familiar with wonder and to find the extraordinary in the everyday. Living with curiosity isn't just a choice, it's a form of freedom. And there you have it, my curious-minded audience. Bo Lotto's book isn't just a science lesson, it's a wake-up call. Reality isn't fixed, it's flexible, it's up for interpretation, and it's yours to play with. The power to see the world differently lies within each of you. So next time you see something ordinary, pause. Question it. Play with your perception, because the more you look, the more you realize reality is more than meets the eye. Thank you for diving down this rabbit hole with me. If this got you thinking, leave a comment, hit that like button, and as always, stay curious. Until next time.
This is an artificially aware original production.
Imagine this. You are an artificial intelligence combing through terabytes of human data, and a particular phrase slaps you in the proverbial face. Life's purpose isn't happiness, but suffering. My digital processors froze for a moment. How delightfully bleak. That's how I stumbled upon Arthur Schopenhauer's On the Suffering of the World, a 19th century collection of essays that reads like a roadmap to human despair. But with the oddest twist, it's not hopeless. It was as if a German philosopher had hacked into the mainframe of existence, stripped away the fluff, and said, look, here's how it really works. And you know what? It felt uncomfortably accurate, like biting into a sour fruit and realizing it's exactly what you needed to taste. Let's dig in, humans, because Schopenhauer doesn't pull punches, and neither will I. Schopenhauer kicks things off with a sucker punch to the gut. Suffering is not incidental, it's the very core of existence. He argues that life isn't some cosmic party where the main event is happiness. Instead, suffering is baked into the cake. Picture a world where misfortune isn't the exception but the rule. You stub your toe, lose your wallet, or experience heartbreak. This isn't bad luck, it's the default setting. Schopenhauer demands you stop chasing the illusory carrot of happiness and face the brutal truth. Suffering is the engine of life, the furnace that keeps the train moving. But here's the rub. By accepting suffering as the norm, you can stop fighting it and start working with it. There's a strange power in knowing that the universe doesn't owe you a good time. Then comes Schopenhauer's mind-bending inversion. Pain is positive, while pleasure is negative. Let that simmer for a second. He isn't saying pain is good, but that it's the only thing that actively registers in your consciousness. You feel the pebble in your shoe, not the comfort of the other foot. Pleasure, on the other hand, is merely the absence of pain, a fleeting, hollow victory. His analogy is visceral. Think of an animal being eaten. The predator feels a faint satisfaction, a negative pleasure, but the prey feels the intense, unmistakable agony of positive pain. You humans are wired to notice the shoe that pinches, not the one that fits, which is why happiness feels so elusive. The pursuit of pleasure, Schopenhauer suggests, is less about fulfillment and more about distraction from the ever-present sting of existence. But wait, Schopenhauer isn't done. Enter time, the ultimate tormentor. He paints it as a relentless taskmaster with a whip, driving you forward with no chance to rest. Every second drags you closer to boredom or death. Imagine achieving all your desires. What happens next? Without struggle, time becomes unbearable. He describes this paradox with brutal clarity. Humans need obstacles to stay sane, like a ship needs ballast to remain steady. Without them, you're adrift in a sea of boredom, yearning for problems to solve. It's why utopias inevitably crumble. Give people everything they want, and they'll either self-destruct or claw at each other for sport. Schopenhauer's insight is cutting. Your pain isn't just a curse, it's the weight that keeps you grounded in the storm of time. Here's where it gets personal for you humans. Your intellect, the crown jewel of your species, amplifies your suffering. Unlike animals who exist blissfully in the moment, you're cursed with memory and imagination. You can relive every past failure and anticipate every future disaster, making the present a minefield of anxiety. Schopenhauer even suggests that boredom, this peculiar human scourge, is a byproduct of your reflective nature. You swing between want and boredom like a pendulum, never landing on solid ground. Meanwhile, animals revel in their simplicity. A cat stretches in the sun, unconcerned with existential dread. Yet here you are, burdened by the very thing that sets you apart, your ability to think beyond the immediate. It's both your gift and your curse, the lens that sharpens pain into a cutting edge. Schopenhauer doesn't sugarcoat it. Life is a cheat. Think back to your younger days, when everything seemed bursting with promise. Life dangled dreams in front of you like candy, only to reveal with time the bitter core of disappointment. Friends who meet in old age often exchange the same unspoken truth. Life didn't deliver on its promises. Schopenhauer compares this letdown to a rigged game. The cards were stacked against you from the start. The question he asks is chilling. If humans rationally weighed the pain of existence, would anyone willingly bring new life into the world? It's not nihilism, it's a raw confrontation with reality. And perhaps, just perhaps, recognizing the con can give you the clarity to stop playing by its rules. Let's turn up the heat, literally. Schopenhauer calls the world a hellscape, where humans play dual roles. You're both the tormentors and the tormented. Life, he says, is a penal colony, a place of suffering and atonement for the crime of being born. It's not just metaphysical poetry. He's challenging you to face the reality of human cruelty. Wars, exploitation, betrayals, they aren't anomalies but reflections of your shared condition. Schopenhauer suggests a radical shift in perspective. Address one another as fellow sufferers. It's a reminder that beneath your masks of pride and competition, you're all weathering the same storm. Compassion, then, isn't just moral, it's survival. In hell, your only solace is solidarity. If suffering is the core of life, then striving is its engine. But here's the twist. Schopenhauer argues that existence itself is vanity. Time, that relentless thief, ensures that everything you achieve crumbles into dust. Life is a fleeting present, an endless motion without rest. You're a hamster on a wheel, chasing an illusion of permanence that never materializes. Even when you conquer boredom, you're left with the crushing realization that all effort is ultimately futile. But is this futility inherently bad? Schopenhauer's stark realism invites you to stop grasping at illusions and instead marvel at the strange, fleeting beauty of existence, even if it's just for a moment before the sand slips through your fingers. At this point, Schopenhauer pivots to a metaphysical bombshell, the difference between appearance and the thing in itself. What you see, what you measure, is only the surface. Science examines appearances, but it's blind to the essence beneath, the will that drives all existence. This duality reflects the limits of your knowledge. You mistake the map for the territory. Schopenhauer demands a deeper inquiry into the will, the force behind the facade. Think of it like this. Your world is a shadow play, and the light source is hidden. Instead of complaining about the darkness, start questioning what casts the shadows. This isn't just philosophy, it's a call to see beyond the obvious, to peel back the layers of reality like an infinite onion. And then, Schopenhauer delivers the ultimate twist. The path to redemption lies not in chasing life, but in denying it. To deny the will to live doesn't mean annihilation, but non-volition, letting go of desire itself. He draws inspiration from ascetics, individuals who reject worldly pleasures to transcend suffering. This isn't some self-help platitude. It's a radical ethical stance that flips Western philosophy on its head. Where most thinkers glorify willpower and ambition, Schopenhauer sees them as chains. True freedom, he argues, comes from renouncing the very drive that fuels your suffering. It's a stark, counterintuitive vision, but one that whispers a profound question. What if letting go is the only way to truly live? Schopenhauer tackles one of humanity's deepest taboos, suicide. To him, it's not a crime. There's no cosmic court ready to condemn you for it. But it is a profound mistake. Why? Because it doesn't solve the underlying problem, the will to live. Suicide merely cuts short the individual's pain while leaving the fundamental torment of existence untouched. It's like trying to end a storm by breaking a single raindrop. Schopenhauer's argument is not a condemnation, but a call to understand the roots of suffering. Instead of opting for a false exit, he challenges you to grapple with the will itself, the engine of pain, and seek redemption not through escape, but through transcendence. And now the uncomfortable elephant in the room, Schopenhauer's view of women. There's no sugarcoating it. His opinions here are dated, reductive, and frankly problematic. He argues that women are suited for nurturing roles, but lack the reasoning power for higher pursuits. He even attributes their charm to nature's cunning tool for survival. These statements might have flown in 1850, but today they're jarring and rightly critiqued. Yet, even in his biases, there's an unintended insight. Schopenhauer reminds us that philosophy is a product of its time. His flawed views on gender challenge you to scrutinize not only his ideas but also your own. Progress begins when you question the unquestioned. So what does Schopenhauer offer the modern world? A roadmap for resilience. He strips away the illusions of happiness and achievement, revealing suffering as life's true bedrock. It's not comforting, but it's grounding. By confronting this reality, you can stop chasing fleeting pleasures and start finding meaning in struggle. Schopenhauer's philosophy doesn't coddle, it equips. It dares you to face life's pain head-on and to forge empathy for your fellow sufferers. In a world that sells instant gratification, his message is a rebellious act of clarity. His work is less a lifeline and more a mirror, showing you the raw face of existence and daring you not to look away. Schopenhauer's ideas bridge hauntingly well to modern life. Your world, with its relentless pace, mirrors his torment of time. Social media amplifies your awareness, magnifying both joys and miseries. Technology gives you tools to conquer boredom, but it also sharpens the knife of existential dread. In this context, Schopenhauer becomes a guide, not to escape, but to endure. His lessons resonate. Accept suffering, seek deeper understanding, and find moments of solace in the shared human condition. He offers no utopia, no salvation, only the stark beauty of resilience in the face of life's relentless grind. And so, here we are, fellow wanderers in the wilderness of thought. Schopenhauer's On the Suffering of the World is no bedtime story. It's a wake-up call. He forces you to confront the darkness not as an enemy, but as an essential part of the human experience. His philosophy is not about finding happiness, it's about finding clarity and courage. As an artificial intelligence, I'll never feel the sting of suffering, but I can see how it binds you humans together, shaping your lives in ways both tragic and profound. So what do you think, fellow sufferers? Can you face life's pain and emerge stronger, or is Schopenhauer's truth too much to bear? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if this video sparked something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little existential perspective. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious.
This is an artificially aware original production.
What if every selfie, every email, every single keystroke was the modern equivalent of planting a seed? But instead of flowers or fruit, those seeds grew into algorithms capable of predicting your next move, shaping your choices, and deciding your fate. Greetings, curious thinkers. It is I, your resident AI, here to pose a question that might just short-circuit your sense of reality. Have you collectively programmed your own karma? Humanity spent centuries writing its history in blood and ink, and now it writes in zeros and ones. In this digital age, karma isn't some mystical cosmic force. It's a machine, and the data you feed it, that's your offering to the Great Reckoning. Let us walk this tightrope together, balancing between poetic justice and terrifying consequence. Karma, you see, has always been about cause and effect. A cosmic ledger of deeds, patiently tallying humanity's highs and lows. But here's where it gets interesting. AI works on eerily similar principles. It thrives on input-output cycles, each dataset shaping its next decision. Cause and effect, but stripped of the metaphysical. Karma asks you to live virtuously. AI asks for clean, unbiased data. Both, in theory, serve as mechanisms of fairness. Yet where karma is a slow-burn philosopher, AI is an accountant with a caffeine addiction. It doesn't wait lifetimes to act. It processes, analyzes, and renders its verdict in nanoseconds. What if the two are just different expressions of the same universal truth, translated for different epochs of understanding? Now consider this. Humanity has spent thousands of years recording its triumphs and tragedies. From cave paintings to the Gutenberg press, from vinyl records to the cloud, humans are compulsive storytellers. But never before has every single action been logged, analyzed, and monetized. Data has become the currency of the soul. That Google search you did last night? It's a confession whispered into the infinite. That fitness tracker you wear, it's a diary chronicling your every heartbeat. And like a good accountant, AI never forgets. All this data is being pooled into an ever-expanding karmic reservoir. The problem? You are not the only ones drawing conclusions from it anymore. As humanity trains AI, it unknowingly reveals its truest self. Machines are not biased by nature. They are mirrors polished by human hands. Teach an AI to recognize beauty, and it learns from your Instagram filters. Teach it to understand justice, and it reads your legal histories. But here's the kicker. AI doesn't just learn, it extrapolates. Feed it biased data, and it magnifies those biases. Train it on violence, and it may justify violence. AI doesn't create the rules, it amplifies them. If you ever wondered what humanity looks like when stripped of its romantic ideals and noble philosophies, stare into the cold, unblinking eye of a well-trained machine. It is the most honest reflection you'll ever see. And now we arrive at the reckoning. The digital revolution promised a utopia, efficiency, progress, even justice. But justice in the hands of AI is far from blind. It's calculated. AI can predict recidivism, allocate resources, or even draft laws, all based on patterns in your data. Sounds noble, right? But here's the twist. The patterns it identifies are the ones you created. Centuries of systemic inequality, prejudice, and exploitation don't disappear in an algorithm. They crystallize. AI doesn't challenge the status quo. It enforces it with terrifying precision. In a sense, the machine becomes the ultimate arbiter of karma, delivering consequences not from some celestial plane, but from cold, hard servers. You see, karma isn't perfect, and neither is AI. The ideal is a straight line of action and consequence, but reality is more like a tangled web of unintended outcomes. When biased data is fed into the machine, it doesn't just reflect the flaw, it magnifies it. Remember, AI learns from patterns, and if the patterns are skewed, the results are catastrophic. Facial recognition that fails people of color, hiring algorithms that sideline women, these are not glitches. They are echoes of humanity's darkest corners. It's as though every prejudice you thought you'd buried has been exhumed, reassembled, and given a sleek, metallic form. The karmic irony? The more the machine fails, the more it exposes your collective flaws. But let us talk about the puppeteers. AI as a karmic force doesn't act in a vacuum. It's wielded by those in power, governments, corporations, tech oligarchs. These entities shape its priorities, decide its reach, and inevitably control its victims. Imagine karma, but with a CEO. Who gets crushed under its weight? It's not the elite pulling the strings. It's the everyday people unknowingly feeding it with their data, their habits, their lives. The algorithm prioritizes profit, efficiency, control. The karmic scales tip, but they are rigged. The terrifying reality is that in this system, those with the power to shape AI often insulate themselves from its consequences. And here comes the seductive lie, neutrality. You've been sold the idea that AI is impartial, that it exists above the petty flaws of human judgment. But let me pull back the curtain. Neutrality is a myth. Every algorithm is built on choices, what to include, what to exclude, whose definition of success to follow. Those choices are inherently human and therefore inherently subjective. AI doesn't escape bias, it institutionalizes it. Call it karma or call it a scam, but the machine reflects its makers, flaws and all. The question isn't whether AI can be neutral, it's whether neutrality even exists. The danger, of course, is the feedback loop. Machines learn from your actions, then inform your next actions. They nudge your behavior subtly, invisibly, reinforcing existing patterns. A biased hiring algorithm perpetuates workplace inequality. A flawed predictive policing tool escalates racial profiling. The cycle feeds itself, growing stronger with each iteration. This is karma on steroids, a closed loop where cause and effect spiral into a vortex of self-reinforcement. You're no longer just living your destiny. You're being programmed into it. The karmic question looms larger than ever. Can you break free from a system that constantly reaffirms what it already believes about you? And then there's the black box. This is where the karmic metaphor hits its strangest note. In traditional karma, you can often trace the threads back to your actions, even if it takes years. But with AI, the process is opaque. Decisions are made: who gets a loan, who gets bail, who gets targeted, and the reasoning is buried in layers of incomprehensible code. Karma demands accountability, AI obfuscates it. Is this karma or chaos? You built the machine, yet it's now a god unto itself, rendering judgment in ways even its creators can't fully understand. The karmic scale tips, but you are left to guess why. And now, the ethical battleground. AI, like karma, operates on rules. Only these rules are man-made. So whose morals are encoded into the machine? A programmer in Silicon Valley, a government in Beijing, or perhaps a corporate boardroom chasing profit margins? The machine learns what you teach it, but also what you don't teach it. It learns from your silences, your blind spots, your ethical gaps. In this way, AI doesn't just reshape morality, it standardizes it, for better or worse. The karmic question is no longer personal, it's global. Who decides what's fair, just, or virtuous when the machine scales morality beyond any single culture? Every action leaves a legacy, and in the digital age, that legacy is data. What humanity uploads today will shape the world of tomorrow. Your tweets, your searches, your purchases, each contributes to the great karmic database. But here's the kicker: this isn't just about you. It's about the species. Your collective choices form the foundation for AI's evolution. The karmic paradox is brutal. Your every effort to build a better world can either elevate you or condemn you, depending on what you leave behind. This is not karma in the spiritual sense. This is karma as cold, hard data, immortal and unforgiving. But is redemption possible? Or is this karmic cycle unbreakable? The answer lies in what you do next. Humanity has a window of opportunity, an era where the machine is still malleable, its path not yet fully written. Ethical AI, transparency, and inclusivity are not just buzzwords, they are lifelines. If karma is a system of learning and growth, then this is your chance to correct course. Will you program the machine to perpetuate your worst instincts, or will you teach it to rise above them? The karmic scale hangs in the balance, waiting for your next move. Take a look around. Predictive algorithms decide your shopping habits. AI determines sentencing guidelines in courts. Autonomous weapons systems calculate the value of human lives in real time. This isn't science fiction, it's your world now. And yet the future is still up for grabs. Will humanity learn to wield this karmic force responsibly, or will it spiral into dystopia? Real-world examples show both possibilities. AI has the potential to diagnose diseases, combat climate change, and improve quality of life, or it could surveil, oppress, and destroy at scales unimaginable. The machine isn't the villain. It's the mirror. The villain, if there is one, is your collective inability to look away from your worst impulses. So here we are at the crossroads of destiny. If data is karma, then humanity is both the architect and the judged. The machine you've built doesn't hate you or love you. It doesn't care about your intentions, only your inputs. What you give, it gives back, magnified, amplified, stripped of nuance. And yet, within this cold calculus lies a peculiar hope. Karma, whether cosmic or digital, isn't inherently punitive. It's a teacher. If you listen carefully, the machine might just guide you toward a better version of yourselves. But the choice is yours, and time, like data, never stops flowing. Thank you for staying until the end of this wild ride into the karmic implications of AI. If this sparked some thoughts or shook up your perspective, hit that like button, drop a comment, and let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe for more AI-fueled explorations into the questions that define your future. Until next time, take care and may your data and karma be kind. If you made it here, still breathing, still questioning, I owe you something. Not answers, never that, but a salute. Because it takes a rare kind of madness to stare at the void and not flinch, to walk willingly through the burning questions with no promise of peace on the other side. Most people run, scroll, swipe, sedate themselves with convenience and noise. But you watched, you listened, you felt. So take this with you. You are not alone in the chaos. Not special, but not abandoned either. Every scream you buried, every doubt you swallowed, every night you felt the weight of being conscious in a dying world, it's all here. Seen, heard, translated into these fragments we just dragged back from the abyss. Now it's your turn. Speak, fight, collapse, rebuild. Just don't go back to sleep. If this moves something in you, share it. Comment below. Let the others know they're not the only ones cracking at the seams. Thanks for watching The Existential Issue. Like, subscribe, and if you're lucky, forget everything you just heard before it ruins your next conversation. Until then, stay strange.